brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. It is all coming up today on 580 Sports Talk. And of course, don't forget that you can now check us out on YouTube as well. Sports on 580 WIBW. That's where you can find us on YouTube. We are live streaming every show. A few minutes late with the stream today. Had some computer issues, but it is all up and running right now. Sports on 580 on YouTube is where you can find us. You can interact with us, as always, on the YouTube comments and on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is that text line number. Let's get right into it with college basketball from last night. Both KU and K-State winning. We will start with the reigning, defending, undisputed champions of college basketball. They are the Kansas Jayhawks, and they are 1-0 after an 89-64 win over the Mavericks of Omaha. Not Nebraska, Omaha. It is just Omaha. Similar to how UMKC is now just Kansas City. It's just Omaha now. So all the people I saw at the game wearing their Uno shirts, not the branding anymore. That is the wrong branding for your school. It is Omaha now.
Maybe if Kansas City and Omaha combined basketball teams, that would not be the first time that's ever happened. You have Kansas City, Omaha. They could name themselves the Kings.
They could do that.
And maybe they'd be good enough to beat Lincoln, Missouri from the MIAA, because Kansas City themselves was not last night.
No.
That's not good.
No, that's real bad.
That's probably not great to lose to the team picked to finish 13th place in the MIAA.
UMKC, I'm sorry, Kansas City, the Roos, they're in a bad spot right now.
They got ruined.
Damn it, man. Come on.
Yeah, I feel bad about it.
You got that from Jake cross-talking earlier. Let it seep into you. KU wins, though, and look, this game was obviously more about KU than it was about Omaha. No duh. Handful of things stood out to me that were really good. Handful of things stood out to me that not necessarily bad. It's the first game of the year. Your head coach isn't out there. A lot of new faces, a lot of guys taking on bigger roles. The obvious good, let's start there, okay? 4 things stood out to me. Number 1, Grady Dick is the real deal. His release is unbelievable. He is a freshman. He is 18 years old, and he has a release that's as quick as anybody I've ever seen at KU. And I know the instant comparisons are Christian Brown because of size and aggressiveness.
And being white.
Well, yes, that too. And Jalen Wilson actually used that comparison in the postgame yesterday as well. And the other one that comes up is Svi Mikhailuk, because of the ability to shoot the ball. I mean, and Svi is maybe the best shooter.
And being white. Yeah.
Svi is one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter that KU has ever had in terms of efficiency from 3. I mean, Dick's release is that quick. It is unbelievable how quickly because he doesn't have a big looping motion or anything.
Right.
Brown did have that. He has that hitch when he goes up with it. He still does that now in the NBA, but when you're also wide open all the time, that doesn't really matter. Dick, he can catch the ball pretty much in shooting position and gets rid of it instantly. It's unbelievable. He's aggressive. He looked better on defense, just activity-wise, than he did even in the exhibition game, which is a big deal. He doesn't need to be great defensively. Now, Self will want him to be, but I mean, he was out there. He was trying. He was giving it his all. Sometimes freshman scoring guys aren't like that. So love to see that from him.
Yeah, the thing with Dick, for me, that stood out was just how ready he looked for ready physically he looked for the competition. Because I don't know that was necessarily true about Christian Brown as a freshman. He just looks, anecdotally, a little more ready for this physically, athletically, than Christian Brown did as a freshman. And obviously, Christian Brown got better. He got stronger. He got more athletic. He fit in very nicely to a national championship team, and now he's a first-round pick in the NBA. He's in the NBA. So that's not a knock. I'm not knocking Christian Brown, but Grady Dick, to me, seems like he's maybe got a step more quickness, ability to finish at the rim. He's rocking the rim with breakaway dunks. And you're right about the release. The way he elevates the ball, that's not a blockable shot that he shoots. That is a catch-and-shoot release that is not something that defenders are going to be able to do a whole lot about. So that's one of those shooters that if they've got half an inch of space, they're open. That's an open look because of how they elevate when they shoot. And he looks like a special talent. He looks like a guy who can step in right away and be very productive. You said it, though. He's going to have to prove he can guard.
Mhm.
We'll see. Omaha's obviously not the test of that Duke is going to be, or that other teams in this non-conference schedule are going to be before you get to Big 12 play. But if he can not be a total loss on the defensive end, he's going to be a very, very important player. He's going to play a lot of minutes for this Jayhawk team because they need that shooting, they need that scoring, and he looks like he can give it to them right off the rip.
And that release is why Bill Self has said that he might be the best shooter that he has ever coached. And that is also why, if you're a KU fan, you should enjoy him while you can. Because Grady Dick is not going to be long for KU. He ain't playing 4 years in Lawrence, okay? I can guarantee that right now. I will address this very quickly. A comment from the YouTube comments. And again, you can interact with us on the YouTube, Sports on 580. That's where we're live streaming. Quick question. To what extent can we comment about Grady's last name before we get in trouble? You got to be creative at this point. We've had an exhibition and a regular season game in which the low effort jokes have been all over the place. If you're going to give it some effort, it's okay. If you're just going to say, haha, that last name, no, that's too much. Can't have that. Got to put some effort into it.
Man, that's his last name. That's a lot of people's last name.
Yes.
The fact that it is also a slang term for a part of the male anatomy, he's got nothing to do with that.
No, that's not Grady's fault.
No. So does it mean we have to be a little bit more careful when we talk about things like a quick release? Yes, it does. But we'll get there. We'll figure it out. We'll be mature adults about it together.
There's a difference between quick and premature. Other good things from the contest. Kevin McCullough looks the part already. There is a reason. Bill Self always chooses his words very carefully and very intentionally. There is a reason that at Big 12 Media Day, Bill Self said Kevin McCullough, when he hit the portal, we thought he was the perfect fit for this team. Yes, absolutely. The way he defends, the way he is still able to space the floor enough offensively, cut to the basket aggressively, make smart plays. Kevin McCullough is going to be one of the most important players for this KU team, and it's not going to be close. So he looks awesome. I thought Jalen Wilson, better than advertised, or at least as advertised.
Boy, and if he's shooting like that, like that's huge because Kansas is going to need that perimeter threat because as we kind of saw, they don't have a ready-made post-scoring option just yet. They're going to have to work really hard to get the easy baskets that Bill Self loves to get from his bigs, no matter who they are. Those are going to be fewer and farther between, especially in the early going, because the bigs he's leaning on either aren't big enough or are true freshmen who are still kind of developing. And we'll talk about them, I know, in a bit, but they're going to need more of that perimeter threat. They're going to need to be able to turn some possessions into 3 points to offset some harder to come by 2-pointers. And Jalen Wilson has to be a part of that. I thought he was a better shooter than his numbers made him out to be last year. And if he can actually be a positive contributor from distance this season, that's big for Jalen. That's big for like his NBA future individually.
Yes.
But it's also really, really big for this Kansas team. And he made those first couple. I said, oh boy, it might be cancel Christmas because a Jalen Wilson that makes 35-40% of his threes, that's a guy who might snag Big 12 Player of the Year.
He's got that capability, especially if guys like Mike Miles almost lose to Arkansas Pine Bluff.
Boy, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, we'll touch on that a little bit, I think, in headlines coming up today. Some of the big storylines from yesterday. Bro, Oklahoma scored 51 points and lost to Sam Houston State. TCU almost lost to Arkansas Pine Bluff. Yikes. Not great for either of those programs starting the season. But I digress. Back to KU. Wilson looks awesome. He mentioned that he's playing with confidence. Norm Roberts mentioned he's playing with confidence. Remember, Jalen Wilson had an awful start last year, because he had the DUI, missed a few games due to suspension. He has very much owned up to that. I actually have been very impressed because I'm the kind of person who is very hard. Like, do not ever do that. I think it's really stupid to do that. I think it's incredibly selfish and dangerous to do that. He has owned up to it. I appreciate that a lot about him. He has talked to people about, hey, I made mistakes. This is why you shouldn't. He's matured a lot since then. And let's be frank, he was awful to start last season. Really up until the new year last season, he was awful. But Self kept putting the confidence in him. He was so good in conference play, and he was so good in the postseason. If he can play like that night after night, KU is going to be just fine. The other big thing from the game, and this is the biggest, because all those pieces we just mentioned, we knew Dick was a good shooter. We knew that Wilson was going to be the go-to guy, and we know what this staff thinks about Kevin McCullough. But the two guys who I thought stood out in really important ways, KJ Adams and Bobby Pettiford. Adams we'll get to more in a moment because the unfortunate thing for him is he doesn't really have a great fit position-wise on this team.
Yeah, he's a tweener.
But his energy, man, is unbelievable. He had 8 offensive rebounds last night. He was all over. He was diving for balls. He obviously provides a spark. He's probably a better sixth man than he is. And CJ Moore, actually, we're going to start talking to CJ a few weeks from now as we get deeper into the season. But he's more like Jamari Traylor than he is, Udoka Azubuike or David McCormick. He's not like a true big man. He's a tweener, like you said, but his energy is infectious, and it's a big deal.
And Kansas can't play in the half court the way they want to play in the half court with him at center. Like, they have to do some different things, and they sacrifice some of the things that they want to do and historically have been really, really good at when they have KJ Adams at the 5. That being said, I do love his energy, and I do think that he is going to be a valuable piece for this Kansas team in whatever form or fashion that takes.
And trust is a big deal with Bill. We all know it. We all know trust is a big deal with Bill Self-coached teams.
Yeah, it is.
Who was the energy guy in the Elite Eight game and in the national championship game, despite not playing pretty much the whole tournament when KU needed something defensively? It was KJ Adams. Who got the start in this game over, say, Zach Clements? We'll get to him in a second. KJ Adams did. So that is obviously a good thing for him. Bobby Pettiford was banged up a lot last year, was shut down at the end of the year because he was so injured. He had a couple nagging things this summer, if I remember correctly. He even said last season that he was in his head. Like, hey, this has been hard for me. And he was very open about it, which I appreciate a lot from him. He looked comfortable. He looked smooth. He created offensively like we did not see a single time all of last season. That's another guy. Again, the coaching staff and the head coach in particular, very particular with the way they use language and the things they say in public. Pettiford was getting Frank Mason comparisons going into his freshman year last year from Bill Self. Frank Mason's one of the greatest players in the history of the team, in the history of Kansas basketball. Undisputed, unanimous player of the year in college basketball. Pettiford's got strength. He's small. I mean, he's diminutive, so to speak, but he is strong. He is tough. He can switch all over. He can guard at least 3 positions, if not 4, because of that physical toughness.
I was impressed with his finishing around the rim.
Yes. We never saw that last year. Honestly, most of what we saw was him getting banged up and not knowing where to dribble the ball. Last night, he seemed so comfortable with it, and that's awesome because we know Harris is going to be the one. He is going to be your starting point guard. He's going to play 30-plus minutes every single game. Even if he gets in foul trouble, he's probably going to play 30-plus minutes a game. But Pettiford's an awesome backup for him. And Robert said it last night. He's going to play, KU is going to play them side by side at times this year. And if Pettiford can finish like that, that's going to make up for a lot of scoring that KU we thought wasn't going to have this year. That's awesome for him. Great to see those 2 young guys really step up here in their sophomore years to open it up. They're going to be big, relied-on pieces for this team. The downside, they just need to get more consistent with the scoring because now through 2 games that were against obviously inferior competition, KU would go through these stretches where you think, man, they should be blowing this team out. Like, they should be pulling away in this game. Game got down to 7 points last night in the second half. And I thought, you got to find an answer here. Eventually, they did. His name was Jalen Wilson, and it was Grady Dick in transition. And if KU can get out and run, they're going to be just fine, like we saw at the end of last season. Different faces, I understand that. You just got to find a little more consistency with the scoring. You can't live and die by the run because that run doesn't come, you're going to get in big trouble. The big men. This is the biggest issue. And we knew this going into the year. CJ Moore has a column about it today at The Athletic. That's very well done. Michael Swain talked to us about it over the last couple of weeks. KU's got to find out what they're doing at the 5. Adams got the start last night. He's a great energy guy. He defensively can switch between a couple different spots, but he just doesn't have a natural positional fit with this team. If KU had shooters 1 through 3, you could play Adams at the 4 and make it work. You could do it, but you don't have those shooters. Okay, McCullough's not a shooter. He can shoot, but he's not a shooter necessarily. Harris, we know, is not, although if you leave him open, he'll take them like he did last night. Wilson can shoot, and if he shoots again like he did last night, that's great. I don't necessarily expect a 43% three-point percentage, though. Dick is a shooter. He can definitely shoot. That's about it. Like, you don't have a lot of guys who can just step back and let it fly from 3. Adams, I don't like when he shoots the ball. Okay. I cringe when he shoots it. And that's not his fault. He's never had to do that before, but it's not pretty. And he's not big. He only had, for all the offensive rebounds last night, he had 1 defensive rebound.
Yeah.
If Bill Self had been there on the bench, we would have heard all about that in the post-game press conference. Okay. We would have heard all about that. So he doesn't have a natural fit because he can't score enough to play the 4, and he's not big enough to really play the 5. So what you're left with, your best lineup is probably Harris, Wilson, McCullough, Dick in different order, and then Ernest Udeh, the freshman, underneath. Uday's entire offensive game is catching lobs, which is awesome. Okay. That's a lot of fun to watch.
And KU is great at drawing up plays to get easy baskets for their big man. And as he learns and grows, he'll take advantage of those lob plays and he'll finish them. But it's all the other stuff that you have to be able to do for the whole offense to function.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the concern for Udeh right now. Can he make an elbow jumper if they need him to? Can he make a baby hook in the middle of the lane if they need him to?
Yeah.
Can he pass to a cutter if they need him to? I don't need him to be Udoka and Dedrick Lawson combined right out of the gate. It's not fair to him to expect him to be that right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, you look at the great Kansas teams of recent memory, the Final Four team 2018, the national title team last year, really any great, truly great Bill Self team has had that big post presence who could do a lot of those things, but took advantage of the easy offense that Bill Self's sets are designed to get them. Uday's the best fit they have for that right now, no question. He fits that better than Adams. Zach Clements has clearly fallen out of favor. I don't know what that's about. He just must not be playing very well in practice, not developing on the schedule they expected, not getting strong.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's just not filling out the way that they were hoping he would. I don't know what the deal is there, but he's obviously out of favor at the moment. So it is a bit of a pickle for Kansas moving forward because obviously you want to start the guy who's going to help you at both ends. And I don't know who that is right now. And that answer might not be clear until Big 12 play starts. And given how young the guys we're talking about are, it may take longer than that.
I think Uday's got a lot of potential, but it is going to take a lot of time, I think, to get there. He is very raw. You can see the vision with Udeh. It's just not quite there. They'll just need it to be there by the time you get to Big 12 play. That's when it is going to matter. Can you work out the kinks in the Bahamas, against Duke, against some of these lower level players or lower level teams so you can get a little bit stronger by Big 12 play? If you can, Udeh is going to be the best option there. I think that's pretty clear at this point. And by the way, speaking of big men, KU last year had a consensus All-American, the undisputed Big 12 player of the year. They had another guy who also got drafted in the first round. They had the best story of the NCAA tournament in Remy Martin. And guess who the guy who ends the promo video before the game is? It's David McCormick. That tells you about what KU needs. Udeh will get there. He will get there one day. I'm certain of that. I just don't know how long it might take for him to get there. We're going to take a break. We're going to talk more college basketball later on this hour when we get to K-State and a very fun start to the year for the Tang Gang. Right now, though, we'll come back from commercial break for a Random Question Tuesday here on 580 Sports Talk.
which the arena that they played at was McNichols Sports Arena. It was named after McNichols was I think he was might have been the mayor or the governor. He was an important local politician, probably important in getting the arena built. They moved out of the Denver Coliseum. They moved into McNichols Sports Arena. Everybody called it Big Mac, and I thought that was great.
That's pretty.
So that was one of my favorite ones of all time. The bounce house is really good.
Yeah,
UCF, Central Florida. Very, very, very cool nickname. To call that stadium the bounce house.
I like that one a lot.
Also, the Cleveland Browns Stadium being called the Factory of Sadness.
Yeah,
that's a good one too.
The Fog is a good one. Maybe not the best. It's good. That's a very good one. I mean, you've got the classic ones. You know, just calling Ohio Stadium the Shoe is pretty cool.
Yeah.
The Big House.
Yeah.
You've got all those classic ones.
Octagon of Doom is pretty great.
Octagon of Doom is pretty good. That's a very solid one. I will lean toward, just because it's fun to say, the GABA. That's the Brisbane Cricket Ground. That's where my beloved Brisbane Lions play.
Okay.
Also various cricket teams. I've never watched cricket. I don't know if you ever have. I've never gotten into cricket.
I just don't understand the rules or the scoring. Like, I get generally what is being accomplished, but I don't understand how it's scored. Like, and please, like, every time I try and read it, my eyes glaze over like I'm reading the terms and conditions for my new iPhone or something. Like, I just can't get through it.
The Kennel, Gonzaga. That's a good one. I like the Kennel. Yeah, I think that'd probably be my list.
The old Atlanta Fulton County Coliseum used to be called the Launching Pad.
Yeah, that's good.
That was cool. A lot of home runs were hit there.
That's a good one. Trying to think of any others.
From the Big O Tires text line, they submit the simplicity of the K for Kauffman Stadium.
Okay, simple. I like it. I like that one. Yeah, the Pillbox, though. I had not heard of that one this morning.
That is remarkable.
Isn't it?
How did STSOP, STLP, St. Louis Pharmacy School, how'd they fare against SEMO last night?
I will look up the score right now. At one point, let's see. I guess this was the other day. It was not just last night. Let me pull this up. Oh, they don't have it here. Hold on. I will find you this result. We will get to the bottom of this.
Genuinely interested.
SEMO, the Red Hawks. That's got to be one of the worst programs in.
Yeah, not a real.
No, hold on now. All right, I will find this for you. We will get there. Might take a minute, but we'll get there.
So, for my random question today.
Also, sorry, it was the women that were playing SEMO the other day. That was the women's team. It was a screenshot from ESPN was sent to me that just said SEMO versus St. Louis School of Pharmacy. The SEMO women won by 12 points.
Okay.
You should win by more than that.
They call it, they short of STL COP, right? It's St. Louis College of Pharmacy.
I believe that is correct.
Yeah,
yes.
It's not the School of Pharmacy. It's the College of Pharmacy.
Yeah, University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy St. Louis, UHSP. That's their current branding.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
They got like a wild mascot too.
Let's see here.
It's like it's the what is the thing that you mash the pills down into a powder?
The mortar and pestle?
The pestle. Yeah, like I think that used to be their like logo.
Yeah, I had never heard of this school before. It reminded me of this. I don't know if I've shown you this video before, if you've seen it before. The Onion, when they had the Onion Sports Network, they did June Madness.
Yeah.
And it was a fake story about expanding the tournament to 4,096 teams.
Yeah, I remember that.
The Xenon Barber Academy was involved. That's always the one I think of. They also mentioned Emporia State in that video, which I find to be very funny. What do you have for today?
What is your favorite international sporting event? We're coming up on the World Cup, the Sports Washing Cup. That gets started here very shortly. There are going to be games over Thanksgiving week out in Qatar.
So this is an event that incorporates multiple countries competing against each other?
Yes.
Okay.
What is your favorite international sporting event?
Okay, so take the Grey Cup out of it. Although at one point in time, the Grey Cup was an international sporting event when they had American teams.
Yes, the Baltimore CFL team.
Yes. They had at one point won a title more recently than Winnipeg, but now Winnipeg's good, unfortunately.
They wanted to be the Baltimore Colts, and the NFL was like, yeah, no.
They were the Stallions.
Were they?
Yeah.
Did they end up being the Stallions?
Yeah, they were the Baltimore Stallions. Yeah, they won a Grey Cup.
Who were the other? There was a team in Vegas. I feel like there was a team in Memphis, and I feel like maybe in San Antonio.
Yeah, they did have the American expansion.
The American teams in the CFL.
American Canadian football. Yeah, Canadian football in the United States. Here we go. How incredibly helpful. They had the Sacramento Gold Miners.
Oh.
The Las Vegas Posse. The San Antonio Texans. Can we stop with that name? Come on. That's 3 different professional football teams that were named the Texans at some point. The Shreveport Pirates. The Birmingham Barracudas. The Memphis Mad Dogs, and the Baltimore Stallions.
That's like a whole league of American Canadian teams.
Yes, for 3 years. They had an entire division of the sport that was just in the United States.
Man, Sacramento. Where do you suppose they played?
That's a great question. I don't know where they played.
Anyway.
Oh, they played at Hornet Stadium.
Oh, yeah, where Sacramento
Where Sac State is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
My favorite one, I mean, I love the Olympics. Summer Olympics over Winter Olympics.
Yes, 100%.
Easily.
100%.
I don't get nearly as tuned up for the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, I can't really get into like ski jumping.
No, I mean,
also, let's be frank, we're not as good. I mean, America, we're not as good in the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, no, it's
we were, in fact, the whole reason that like snowboarding is in the Winter Olympics is like we got to give the Americans something they'll win.
Yeah,
and now we don't even win that as consistently as we used to. We don't win anymore. Trump was right.
I mean, if we're just talking general Olympics, I would have to go with that. So I'm trying to think if there's not anything else that I'm really super into in that regard internationally. I'm not a soccer guy.
Okay. Yeah. Because I like the
I don't watch the World Cup of basketball.
I feel like I would if it were like easier to find on television.
Yeah.
I feel like Eurobasket. Like I would have watched that if it was like on ESPN all the time.
Yeah.
Like I would have gotten into Eurobasket. Like the European Championship in soccer, I think is really riveting. One listener here from the 785 on the Big O Tires text line submits one of my favorites as well, the World Baseball Classic, which is coming back next year, which I'm very excited about.
The U.S.
We win that.
Trying to win this time around.
Yeah, the U.S. roster for this next World Baseball Classic is loaded. It's going to be fun. Like guys want to do that.
Yeah.
Which is what has made it really cool. I remember really liking the World Cup of hockey, but they don't do that as often as I feel like they should. You can't even remember when the last one was.
Have you ever watched the Commonwealth Games? It's hard to find. You can't like easily find it. But it's like the Olympics just of British Commonwealth countries.
I've heard of it, yeah.
They've got I had heard of it, but I had never watched it or cared about it, but I saw them advertise it during an AFL game this year. They've got something called bowls. Like not bowling, it's just called bowls.
Isn't this just like bocce, basically?
Similar,
yeah.
Yes. They've got netball, which is not basketball. It's not handball. It's netball. It's like basketball.
Yeah.
But there's no backboard and you can't dribble. It's very odd. I had never seen it before.
They play netball in America. I looked it up not too long ago because somebody on my Twitter account was like, what sport is this? I'm like, oh, yeah, it's netball.
Huh.
And do we play netball? Yeah, but not well. Like I think we're ranked below like Papua New Guinea in the international netball rank.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. So yeah, I would just go with the Olympics in general. I don't know. Is that like jingoistic of me that I only watch the one the Americans are good at? Maybe. It might be. If you've got an answer for that, let us know on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429, or chime in, let us know on the YouTube comments. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube account. We've got to take a break. We'll come back. K-State with a very fun start to the Jerome Tang era. We'll talk about it next on 580 Sports Talk. We're back on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you up until 6 o'clock today. Kansas State basketball began its new era last night, beating UT Rio Grande Valley. UTRGV is just too hard to say. It's got to be UT Rio Grande Valley.
It's a lot of letters.
That was a mix of which schools? UT Pan American and someone else. I know it was originally UT Pan American. I don't remember who the other school was.
Was it? No, I think UT Corpus Christi's still kicking around, aren't they?
Yeah, they're still around. UT Rio Grande Valley.
UT Harlingen, maybe? Because it's way down at the southern tip, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much on the border. UT at Brownsville.
Brownsville. That's
Brownsville. So, yeah, I'm right on the border. That's a good win for K-State. I know you got to watch a little bit more of it than I did. I was obviously at the KU game covering that with most of my attention there. I did get to rewatch much of the first half last night, though. That is the one nice thing about ESPN Plus is everything is archived. You can go back and watch it. I know a lot of people had problems with ESPN Plus last night. Not just KU, not just K-State. I saw Iowa State fans were having problems as well. Good start.
There's a lot of games on.
Yeah, a lot of games.
Maybe the servers were a little overloaded. I had it boot me off once, and then it worked pretty okay for me the rest of the night. I have to say, yeah, I didn't have. I think I got booted, and it was at a commercial break, so it wasn't even a big deal. So yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, so it worked out okay on my end.
Good win overall, though. I mean, there's a lot of energy behind the team. There's a lot of energy with the pieces on this team. I will start with this before we get to the actual game itself. 3 guys are redshirting for this team. I think it's probably smart because you've got to build a little long-term continuity. Still kind of sucks, though, because I think a few of these guys we were really excited to watch play this year.
I was very intrigued by Jarrell Colbert.
Yeah.
Based on what I saw from him in the exhibition game against Washburn. But I do think there is some polish that can come with his game. Mm-hmm. And I think they, trust the veteran know-how of Bebe Eziola underneath more so than Colbert. And if Eziola is going to get a lot of minutes, and he played well last night, and Naquan Tomlin's going to get a lot of minutes, and they've got so much other length, so much other length and size, there was probably not room for all the bigs to play.
Yeah.
So Colbert taking a redshirt year, I was intrigued by him, but it could benefit him, and it certainly would benefit the program in the long run. I think Jerome Tang, talking about after the game, said this puts us ahead of our plan by 2 years. He says it gives us a 2-year jump, basically, in terms of how they are envisioning roster building moving forward. So it's certainly significant in that regard. On the court, it was a strange sensation, one that I don't think I have felt for the last 2 or 3 years. I had fun watching Kansas State play a basketball game. I had fun watching them play. I enjoyed watching them play. I was entertained by the way that they played. The Weber era got to be such a slog, man.
Especially on offense.
And look, at its best, that kind of basketball did produce results. It's undeniable. The banners hanging in Bramlage Coliseum don't lie on that regard. But over the last couple of years, it was just so difficult to watch them. The energy level came and went. The effort level came and went. Offensively, God, it could be like watching paint dry. Even when they were good, you'd have to watch Barry Brown dribble the air out of the ball for 25 seconds every possession sometimes. And it got to looking like a clogged toilet on offense at times. Last night, man, they play 94 feet of hell. I'll tell you what, they played hard. That's the thing. These games, these early season games, they are such a test to me of how invested are your players? How hard do they want to play? How badly do they want to be out there? How committed are they to using every game opportunity as a chance to not just win the game, but get better in the process? I think you see the truly excellent programs that do this year in and year out. They'll blow out teams like UTRGV. You're supposed to. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to win that game by, you're supposed to score 93 points. Win that game by, what did they win it by?
34?
Yeah. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to play with your food against Arkansas Pine Bluff, TCU. You're not supposed to lose to Stetson Who lost to Stetson?
Florida State.
Florida State.
The Hatters. Who won, 10 games last year?
You're not supposed to be tied at the half with something called Clayton, Georgia Tech. You're supposed to blow these teams out. And
Josh Pastner still there, Georgia Tech?
Yeah.
And still going well.
Yeah, still kicking around.
Yeah.
So that was what was most encouraging for me, was that they were on a mission and they played hard. How many times we see Bruce Weber teams play with their food against inferior teams? Happened all the time.
All the
They'd
time.
be tied with 4 minutes left in the first half against Florida A&M. And yeah, eventually your talent shows out and you pull away. But if you decide you want to play for 40 minutes instead of just 25, this is what happens. So the effort and the energy and the defensive intensity and the ability on the glass, like all that stuff, they passed that test with flying colors. And as they built a 30-point first half lead, it was very clear that they were having fun playing with each other. This is a brand new group of guys, right? Like these guys had never played. They played 3 basketball games together, essentially. The secret scrimmage, the exhibition against Washburn, and this one. They look like they're having a blast playing with each other. They're throwing behind the back passes. Tyke Green is dunking on people. Keontae Johnson's dropping threes. You talk about a guy who's having fun. Lucky to be alive. Never mind playing basketball.
Yeah.
Like Keontae Johnson, I think is going to be a model for this team. And I think that's what Jerome Tang intends to use him as. Like, you do not take this game for granted. Do not take the opportunity to play these games for granted, because here's a guy who lost that for 2 years.
You also mentioned, in those past games when K-State would just mess around, that the talent would show through at the end. Also mentioned that in the past, the Weber system led to good results. You won a lot of games. Go back and look at those teams, though. Look at the most recent one, right? They went to the Elite Eight, and then the one the next year that won the Big 12. Barry Brown's an all-timer. Dean Wade is still playing real minutes for a good NBA team. The Cavs are good now. This wasn't just they need to fill out their roster with dudes so they can tank. No, Dean Wade's getting real minutes for a real contender in the Eastern Conference.
No, they had 2 all-time, put those guys in the rafters type players in the program at the same time. Yeah.
And then obviously you go back even further, 2013, you had other great players. The point is, once that system didn't have all-time K-State greats, it all went to you-know-what. 4-letter S word. That's what that team looked like the last few years. This K-State team, not only do they have a better system and a better energy in the program, they've got dudes. They've got dudes who this program just didn't have last year.
They got athletes.
Yeah.
That's the thing I will say about them. They are athletes. Now, there were some parts of it on offense that looked a little ragged. The finishing around the rim left a little to be desired. K-State should have scored 110, 120 points if they finished a little better around the rim. So some of the finishing left a little bit to be desired. I did love seeing them shoot 44% from deep. I didn't think they had that in them after I watched them up close against Washburn. They were 5 of 21 from behind the arc in that game. So that was a little more like what Jerome Tang, I think, expects. I mean, 44% is really good, but he expects them to be more of a 35 to 40% 3-point shooting group on the whole. They balanced the scoring out really well, which is what you'd expect. Marquise Noel had 14. Naquan Tomlin, who he's still learning how to play the sport, and he's out there scoring 14 points. Keontae Johnson had 13. Bebe Eziola had 12. Desi Sills had 10. Ish Masood had 10. Just really good balance. The ball moved. It didn't get stuck. They scored a lot in transition. I think that's what it's going to look like when they start playing really good teams, which they're going to play better teams in UTRGV.
Yeah.
When they play really good teams, we'll see what it looks like in the half court, because they don't have a ton of bucket creators. I like Noel a lot, but he's also 5'8". And outside of Keontae Johnson, who's done it in the SEC, they don't have a lot of guys who are just one-on-one going to break you down and rescue a possession that gets bogged down. But their effort on the glass and their effort in transition are what are going to help them score points. And it's going to make them a really fun team to watch. And you said it at the very beginning. The buy-in is already there from the students. The student section was packed to the gills for Washburn. It was packed to the gills for UTRGV. Eventually, they're going to get more people in that building who want to come out and see what this team is all about. The investment in the program, the excitement about the program is back. It is exactly the fresh coat of paint that everything needed around Kansas State basketball, and it could not be off for me to a more promising start. I'm not ready to say, oh, they're going to the tournament. Oh, they're going to be way better than anybody thinks in the Big 12. But I'll say this, they're athletic. They're bouncy. They appear to enjoy playing for each other. The students are behind them, which is going to make the Bramlage bounce a little bit. And they have the potential to be really fun to watch.
That's what this team needed. And I do have questions about who is going to score against tougher opponents. I mean, we know Keontae Johnson. We know that Noel, one way or the other, is going to get his points, right? We saw it last year. He's going to find a way to get his points. So I do have some concerns about that, but that's why you play these games against lower competitions. You can try to find guys for those roles. Long way to go for K-State. I really do believe that. You got to play some tougher competition before I can really buy in all the way, but the initial signs are there. It's extremely encouraging for where this Kansas State program is. That's good to see. That's really good to see. And the efforts that Tang and his staff made to give the program back to the students and the student body, I think, paid dividends last night. You really, really had to see that after, again, the slog that was the last few years. We'll move on to the Kansas City Chiefs, and we'll talk to Michael Swain coming up next hour here on 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on this Tuesday afternoon. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon hours with us. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We've got 2 more hours on the show today. And coming up in this hour of the program, we'll get to some news from the NFL. How could a Josh Allen injury change the entire Super Bowl race, and how much easier could it make it for the Kansas City Chiefs? That's coming up here in just a moment. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You. 2 new stories will compete to go up against our weekly champion so far. The folks who stole from a Springfield, Missouri Ross took 2 different getaway cars and then crashed into each other on their way out of the Ross parking lot.
Crashed into each other.
It is very funny.
Whatever happened to carpooling?
Right? Then they had to get out on foot. Did they think like, oh, you take the tops, I'll take the bottoms. We'll meet up again at home.
You take this stack of Carolina Panthers hoodies. I've got these Remington shavers that are mildly irregular.
I've got the clothes. You take the accessories. I found a really nice belt. Don't lose it. And they crashed into each other.
I love Ross, man. That place is. I got 2 real nice pairs of golf shorts last time I went to Ross.
Nice.
Like really nice. Like an Adidas pair of golf shorts.
That is nice.
Yeah.
Got robbed. And people crashed. Did they repatriate the clothing?
I don't think we know that.
I hope they did. Someone else could use the, size 12 Nikes or whatever. Size 12 Asics.
The child socks with the Los Angeles Lakers logo on them.
So that's coming up here in just about, a little over 15 minutes. And then Michael Swain of Fog.net is going to join us coming up at the bottom of the hour for Jayhawk Weekly as we break down KU's win from last night over the Omaha Mavericks. Tim Fitzgerald will join us tomorrow to talk all things K-State football and basketball. We got plenty of K-State or KU football to talk about today as well because the Hawks are going bowling, folks. I don't know where, but they're going bowling. We'll talk about that with Michael Swain later on this hour. Of course, you are welcome to join us on the show on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is our text line number. And you can chime in on the YouTube comments as well. Sports on 580 WIBW, that is our YouTube channel, and that is where you can find the comments section. Chime in. Let us know what you think about our attire today, what we're talking about on the show. I've got the KU hat rocking today. Also, one of my favorite, most important bands in my entire life, Minor Threat, wearing the Minor Threat t-shirt today. Dan's got a full old-school Oakland get up today.
Yeah, I got the Oakland Seals here. This 47 brand Oakland Seals pullover. Why? Because
why not?
It's a cool logo. And an Oakland A's hat to kind of match the ensemble with the old swinging A's logo from the 70s, the white shoes.
Yeah. Can we get the extra adornment on the gear also in camera view today?
Yes, the I voted sticker.
Yes.
Yes, the must-have accessory for election day, the I voted sticker.
Yep. Won't tell you who to vote for. It actually, I don't know if it'd be illegal, but we'd have to give like equal time and all that. We're not going to do that. It is election day after all. Go vote. There's a lot that's on the ballot this year, not just our big races you've heard all about. Obviously, the race for the governorship, the race for the Senate, House seats, if you're listening in far eastern Kansas today. There's some constitutional amendments that are on the ballot.
Local ballot issues here in Topeka.
Mm-hmm.
There's sales tax on the ballot here in the city of Topeka. So, yes, lots of things to vote for and make your voice heard on it. Free and fair elections are some of the things that make this country great. And I hope that you folks out there listening either have chosen or will choose to participate today.
Under 3 hours left. Polls close at 7 o'clock. Send it out to your local polling station and go and participate in the voting today. That's the big news worldwide today. The other big news from the NFL world today is Josh Allen might be hurt, and it might be fairly severe. We do not know exactly how severe it is. It sounded initially yesterday morning like, hey, it's probably all right. They're going to keep monitoring it. They'll figure it out. Then we heard the news yesterday afternoon that, hey, there might be damage to his ulnar collateral ligament, which is like, I don't know. This is like the dumbest thing I'm going to say medically wise. I'm a few credits short of my medical degree. It's like the ACL of your arm, right? Like, your crucial ligament in the arm. Just the way football players and sometimes basketball players have ACL injuries, pitchers in baseball often get UCL injuries.
Mm-hmm.
When you've got a UCL injury, when you've got damage there, that usually leads most of the time, not always. There are other treatments if it's minor, but generally if it's a legit tear or legit damage, widespread damage, it leads to Tommy John surgery.
If it's torn through, you get the Tommy John surgery, and you can do other things with a torn UCL. Like Bryce Harper probably needs Tommy John surgery, but he can still swing a bat.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you saw him do that to great effect in the month of October for the Philadelphia Phillies. But
didn't Salvi do that? Or was it Salvi? No, there was a catcher though. Or no, it wasn't Salvi. Why did I think Salvi? It was Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, Shohei Ohtani.
Who DH'd for a year while he recovered from Tommy John.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a great injury. Now, it's a different mechanism. Throwing a football is a different mechanism than throwing a baseball.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what what is the word that I'm looking for? The precedent. I don't know what the precedent is for this kind of injury for football. Like, does it require the same kind of treatment, the same kind of surgery, the same kind of rehab? And we don't know the length of, or the extent, I should say, of Josh Allen's injuries, whether he has a tear, whether he has a strain, whether he has nerve damage or not. So anything we would be saying on that front would be mere speculation, but it doesn't sound promising. I think if you're in the Bills facility right now, given the information that is public, you're probably at a place where you're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst.
By the way, the last player I can find who actually had Tommy John surgery, who was an NFL quarterback, was Jake Delhomme. Nick Mullins was feared to need it, but did not actually end up needing it. He just had a different elbow injury. So here's my question right now. We're gonna do the last dance thing. We're gonna take two strands. We're gonna eventually have them connect. Right now, take the injury out of it for Josh Allen. How many teams in the AFC do you believe have a legitimate shot to make the Super Bowl?
To make the Super Bowl. I will say that list is no longer than 4 teams.
Okay. Who are your 4? Because I had the same number.
My 4 teams are Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Miami.
Miami. Okay. All right. So Miami is a good one. So I'm going to expand my list to 5, actually. That Miami is a good one. I totally overlooked.
It's not Friday, but I've changed your mind. Perfect.
Yes, you indeed have. I'm also throwing Cincinnati in there. And I can understand why you might not. To quote Will Sennett, who has become a pretty popular guy on a couple different social medias recently, their coach has monkey brains. If you're on, I'm not on TikTok, but I see his get posted on YouTube or on Twitter all the time. He's got a great Twitter account.
He's the guy who said he would strike Timothy Chalamet out on 3 pitches.
Which is one of the funniest videos I've ever seen.
You've been out since the day you were born.
There's another one where he tries to woo Princess Diana away from marrying Prince Charles, and it just turns into him
complaining about the
Bengals.
Yeah.
Which it's so funny.
It's really good.
Very funny guy. But Zach Taylor's an idiot. I get it. Their defense questions. Their offensive line is still bad. Jamar Chase is hurt and might have grandma hips. But when they were cooking there for a few weeks, they looked as good as anybody did. They looked as good as the Bills did. They looked better than the Ravens, I think. So I would say at the absolute most, I've got 5 teams in the AFC who I can see and give a legitimate chance to go to the Super Bowl. Now, if you want to say that, the Chargers could get hot. Yeah, sure. I mean, they could. I could also, well, no, I can't win $2 billion on the Powerball because somebody already did that. Somebody in California won. It wasn't me, so I don't care who it was. But anything could happen, sure. That's the group I think legitimately looks like they could make it to the Super Bowl. The 2 best chances are the Chiefs and the Bills, though. I don't think anybody would argue with that. And the Dolphins are in an especially bad spot because they're probably not going to win that division. Now, if Allen gets hurt, that changes things. They could win that division. But the other biggest part about whether or not Allen gets hurt is the path to the number 1 seed. You get that number 1 seed, that's one less game you have to play in. That's one less set of risks you have to take, right? The Chiefs are tied with the Bills in record at 6-2. The Bills have the tiebreaker, but the Chiefs still do have a very legitimate shot to get that number 1 seed. Can you imagine how much easier that path to a Super Bowl is for the Chiefs if Josh Allen is out for any length of time? If he's out for the rest of the season, that changes everything. But if he's even out for a few weeks, their backup quarterback is Case Keenum. And honestly, as backup quarterbacks go, that's a pretty good spot to be in if you're the Bills, especially because Case Keenum, you may remember, already has a pre-existing relationship with Stephon Diggs, their number 1 receiver. You may have heard of the Minneapolis Miracle. Case Keenum threw that pass that was caught by Stephon Diggs and then run into the end zone. That was a long time ago because Kirk Cousins has been the quarterback in Minnesota for a long time now. That was a long time ago that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But the path opens up for the Chiefs so much more clearly if the Bills take any sort of step back due to a Josh Allen injury. Because the Chiefs, I know the Bengals beat them twice when the Chiefs were the better team last year. They're better than the Bengals. And still on a long timeline, I'm going to talk like Edward Norton in, Fight Club here. But on the timeline, give me the more talented, better coached team more often than not.
Sure.
That is the Chiefs over the Bengals. I think the Chiefs are better than the Ravens. Ravens are good. I'm still not sold on them completely, but they are good. And I think the Chiefs are better than the Dolphins as well. The Dolphins are a bit of a wild card because they are so different than what the Chiefs have faced head-to-head in recent years.
They remind me of the Bengals from last year.
I
where
like that.
They've got
that comparison.
so much explosive offensive talent that they can be terrifying. And I like them to use their talent better than Cincinnati uses their talent. The aforementioned monkey brains for Zach Taylor, a big reason for that. So that's the vibe I'm getting from Miami. They kind of feel like this year's Cincinnati to me, which I don't know what that makes Cincinnati. Maybe that makes them, I don't know what that makes them, but I just, it's been so inconsistent from them. And I know Chase is hurt. And that skews what you see from them the last 2 weeks. But I feel a little more comfortable with Miami right now because I think they might even be a little bit more explosive offensively at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I like their pass rush better with the addition of Bradley Chubb.
I agree with you on that. Here is the question for you, an additional question here. Are the Bills a Super Bowl contender if they lose Josh Allen for the year? Not even like it's just a binary, yes or no. I mean, they could go from number 1 contender to 5th out of 5, but are they still in that contending group if they have to ride with Case Keenum? And we're just doing the hypothetical thing here because we don't know. I mean, Josh Allen might just have to put a brace on his elbow. He might just have to wear a compression sleeve or something the rest of the year and he'll be fine. He got hurt and still threw a ball 69 yards in the air. Nice. In that game on Sunday that the Bills played against the Jets and lost. But do they still have an opportunity to get there all the way if it's Keenum leading the way? Could this be a 2017 Eagles situation if they have to play Case Keenum?
I think Keenum is one of very few backups in the league where you can say that that is possible. I think that, like, if Allen's out for a few weeks, I think Keenum can hold it in the road. If Allen's out the rest of the season and Keenum has to quarterback that team through the playoffs, then they are going to be more limited. And I don't think that doesn't mean they'll be good. I mean, they got a great all-around roster. Like, they've got tremendous talent on defense. They've added Nyheim Hines, so they've got a fair stable of skill position talent. It's fair collection of running backs. They're really good at wide receiver. We know that. I think that they still would be. I would still include them as a Super Bowl contender, even if it were Case Keenum at quarterback the rest of the way. I think the rest of their roster is good enough and that they've played in enough big games. They were in the AFC Championship game just 2 years ago. They've imported veterans who have played in those big games like Von Miller. I would still include them, but I would drop them obviously behind Kansas City. And I might be inclined to also drop them behind Baltimore, Miami as well, just because they'd be much more limited at quarterback. and would have to lean maybe a little more heavily on that running game or those running backs in a way that we don't know if they're equipped for.
Hines suddenly becomes the biggest, one of the biggest acquisitions, at the trade deadline. Immediately becomes one of the biggest acquisitions at the trade deadline. Receiving running back for a backup quarterback, yeah, that's a big help. That is a huge help. And you probably have to rely more on, 6-yard outs to Stephon Diggs that you hope that he can turn up and take up the field for 11 to 12 yards as opposed to 25-yard corners. You've got to rely more probably on the likes of Khalil Shakir, who we've talked about on the show before, who we know the Bills really like to be an effective guy in the slot. The thing it takes away is probably your deep ball to Gabriel Davis, at least to the same degree, because Allen not only can get the ball 70 yards, he can get it there in a hurry. Case Keenum doesn't have that kind of arm, and that's why Case Keenum is a backup quarterback. He's actually found a decent amount of success in the league before. He just doesn't have the arm strength. And if he did, he probably would have stuck around a little. Honestly, he'd probably still be starting in Minnesota, or at least
Denver.
would have been for several years, or Denver. Yeah, no kidding. So I just think it's interesting to look at how the race could change, because if you say right now, worst case scenario for the Chiefs, there is a one team ahead of them right now, that they're not the number one favorite. The Bills are still ahead of them. If that, that's probably the worst case scenario right now, just in terms of prognostication for the Chiefs. Okay, fine. You knock the Bills out of that category for any amount of time because of a Josh Allen injury. The Chiefs suddenly have a much clearer path to the 1 seed and a much clearer path to getting to the Super Bowl as well, because whoever they would end up getting matched up with in the postseason wouldn't be as tough to face as a Josh Allen-led Bills team. And even if Allen's just not at 100%, that changes things. Because when you have a quarterback who's no longer at 100%, if you're that Bills team, you're not taking away the risks, right? You're just taking away maybe some of the effectiveness, because that team is built on taking the big plays, the chunk plays, the explosive plays. The same Josh Allen who makes those mind-numbing mistakes is not going anywhere. But if he's not 100%, maybe the ability to throw a ball 70 yards in the air to Gabriel Davis does go away. So I think that opens up things a whole lot more for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're, I think, on a crash course for this year being one of those, the conference championship game is the real Super Bowl kind of years. And that's no disrespect to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're undefeated. They're really good. They're not as good as the Bills or the Chiefs are right now. So I think the path to at least getting to the Super Bowl opens up a lot more for the Chiefs. Let me pose one final question to you then. If Allen misses time, if Allen misses a lot of time, is it fair to say it would be a disappointment for the Chiefs to not make it to the Super Bowl? Because I think you get to a conference championship game, you had a pretty darn good year.
Yeah.
And unless you're like all-time great, that's a pretty damn good season. But if your number one foe in your conference is minimized because they have lesser quarterback play, quarterback injury, whatever, you're clearly better than the Bengals, than the Ravens. I still think than the Dolphins, although they are the new hotness right now. Does that become a disappointment if you don't at least get to the Super Bowl?
I think any year Patrick Mahomes is your starting quarterback and you don't win the Super Bowl will be a little bit disappointing.
Okay.
I just, from a general perspective, when you have the best quarterback in the league, the advantage at the most important position, not just in football, but in all the sports, and you have that advantage going into every season and you don't put a Super Bowl together, that will always feel a little bit disappointing. So I think that is, I guess that's my answer, because the other side of that is you want to have perspective of like they've been to the last 4 AFC championship games. They go again this year. That's incredible. That's like Patriots with Brady stuff. But the Patriots with Brady won more of those games. The Chiefs have won 2 of the last 4. If they only win 2 of the last 5, I mean, that's not Brady stuff.
You know what that is, though?
What is it?
That's early 2000s Andy Reid stuff.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's like a mirror. It's not quite a mirror image because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl, but lose the Super Bowl, get to the championship game and lose a bunch of times. Andy's been there before.
Yeah.
He has done that before.
So, yeah, I think that if the Bills lose Allen, it puts the Chiefs in pole position. The texter from Big O Tires text line says that if Allen misses 4 games, Chiefs should be the number 1 seed, and I expect to win the Super Bowl every year. You should.
Entirely fair.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback. You should go into every year thinking, even if you're not the favorite,
Mhm.
this team can win a Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And anytime you go into the year, even if you aren't the favorite, but you're in with a chance and the chance doesn't come through, then yeah, that is disappointing. But certainly, if you're coming from pole position, if you're coming from the number 1 seed and you don't get there, that's even more of a sting for sure.
We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll come back with today's What Is Wrong With You after this. It's time for What Is Wrong With You on this Tuesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Our weekly winners so far, the pair of thieves that robbed a Ross in Springfield, Missouri, got in different cars and then crashed into each other on their way leaving the scene of the crime. They took off on foot. They were promptly arrested. That's our current weekly winner. Dan, why don't you go first today?
All right. Don't bring a gun through the airport. Just kind of as a general rule, leave the gun at home. Don't try, if you declare it and get it, send it through baggage claim and all of that stuff, there are legal ways, I believe, to travel with a firearm of some kind. But don't just jam it in your bag and think oh yeah, I'm gonna get the yapper through the TSA, because you're not.
The signs they have that say, look at all of these guns we have found at your local airport this year. Certainly they won't find my gun.
There have been 700 of them found at security checkpoints in Florida airports so far this year, over 120 of which were stopped at Fort Lauderdale's airport. Florida accounts for 14% of all firearms found at U.S. airports this year. Good old Florida. Anyway.
2% of the states, 14% of the guns.
Yeah. So there was a tweet from the TSA that some officials in the Fort Lauderdale airport found somebody trying to get a gun through the security checkpoint, and they had stuffed in a cooking hen.
Oh. Okay.
The tweet from the TSA. There's a personal foul here. Our officers at FLL Flyer made this very raw find. We hate to break it to you, but stuffing a firearm in your holiday bird for travel is just a waste of time. So don't wing it.
Is Jake doing social media for the TSA now?
Don't wing it. You'll find all the proper packaging info here. Yeah, it is the bird in question is a I'm trying to find the brand here and pull up the big picture. The Kikiri Quirch Gallina baking hen. Yeah, this is in Spanish. It's a gallina. It's a baking hen.
Oh,
and the person just put a handgun inside the hen.
That'd be gross.
Yeah.
Imagine you try to go pull the trigger and it's all slimy.
Yeah, man. Like, I don't want to eat anything for Thanksgiving that's had the blicky inside of it. Like, I have no desire to eat that whatsoever.
There's this weird taste inside. Yeah, man. So again, I'm not a gun owner. I've never had one. None of a permit, none of that. Why? Don't you think you could go like a week without it? Or like a few days? Maybe not. I don't know. I have no idea. That's a genuine question. You'd think, you know what? I'm going to go have our nice holiday dinner. I will worry about my gun at home when I get home. But maybe not. I don't know. I feel like if you're at a point where it's one of those things where there's a threshold. Like, like this is a pretty extreme example, but like people who are addicted to substances. Like when you leave work to like go sit in your car and, partake in, taking drugs, that's usually a sign that, hey, you need to get some help. You're at a point where you're hiding your gun in a turkey or a ham or a hen. Maybe it's time that you develop a little bit of, tolerance to not being around your gun for a while.
I'm unfamiliar with the concept of a baking hen, by the way. Like, I don't suppose it tastes any different than turkey or anything like that.
We've got a texter from the 785 who says they were hoping on a wing and a prayer they wouldn't get caught.
Oh, gosh. Maybe this person's doing social media for the TSA. Like a hen is obviously a female chicken, so I'm sure it tastes generally just like chicken. But
I would think so.
I don't know what putting your gun.
I don't know. I really don't. Like, again, maybe if you're going that far, it's a sign that you should not be doing it.
Yeah.
Just a thought. My story today is going to take us to a Waffle House in Florida. Man, I haven't been to a Waffle House in I don't even know how long. There's one on 70. I might go out in Bonner Springs.
Yeah, Bonner Springs. Yeah.
I might go. Where we meet Waffle House worker Quanita Morton, who was arrested and accused of stealing someone's wallet. Someone left their wallet at the Waffle House, and Ms. Morton picked up the wallet and kept it for herself. And the cops asked, why'd you do it? And she gave a very simple reason. Quote, the money was calling to me. She heard her calling, and it was the almighty dollar.
Innocent. I can't argue with that. Ma'am, you're free to go.
According to Florida police, the victim paid Waffle House tab early Monday morning, but forgot their wallet on the counter. The wallet contained credit cards and over $2,200 in cash. I never have more than a 10 on me anymore, ever.
Yeah, I rarely ever carry cash.
$2,286 in cash. As recorded by a security camera, the 47-year-old Morton, quote, was seen on video looking around, putting her hat on top of the victim's wallet on the counter. She then slid the hat and wallet into her hands, quote, with discretion. Morton then quickly leaves the establishment while her husband and child are left inside the restaurant to pay. Morton, who works at a nursing home, so she actually didn't work at the Waffle House. She was just at the Waffle House.
Yeah.
That's my mistake. But she works at a nursing home about 8 miles from the Waffle House in St. Petersburg. Aided by the security footage, police subsequently identified her as the theft suspect. During questioning, she admitted to swiping it and said again, the money was calling me. She was arrested on felony grand theft, charged and booked into the county jail, was released on $2,000 bond. She has 4 other convictions for misdemeanor theft in her lifetime.
The money was calling me.
It was calling me. Saw those greenbacks. They were speaking to me. Does that win for you today, or does our personal foul win today?
She said the money was calling me. I just had to answer. Yeah. I just had to accept the charges.
Sir, I heard my calling. It was that 20 I saw peeking out of the wallet.
It's like filling out your W-2 and being like, what is your relationship status? Married to the game.
We have a texter from the 913, And this is a good point about our gun in the hen story. Remember that real gun owners don't have newsworthy stupidity as a trait. I would like to say I do believe that to be true. I think most people, and I know we've got plenty of folks who are gun owners who listen to the program every day. Y'all are taking care of your guns, okay? You're not doing this stupid stuff. You're keeping them locked, keeping them in the box. Most gun owners, I think, are doing the right thing. But there are enough people that we've got plenty of stories, specifically coming out of the Sunshine State, where people are shoving their guns in turkeys or hens. They're, keeping them sitting next to them in the car while they're driving around, committing other crimes that they end up here. But if you're doing the right thing, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are big fans of responsible and safe gun owners.
Yes.
Here on this program.
It is within your rights as an American to hold on to a gun, doing the right thing. This guy not doing the right thing.
I question the need to bring it through the airport. I really question the need to get it on the plane with you. And I especially question the need to jam it up the backside of the baking hen you're going to use to feed the family at Thanksgiving.
We got to get to a break. Who you got today?
I'm definitely going with the money was calling. But she doesn't beat the morons who robbed a store and then crashed into each other.
I'm with you on both of those counts. The money was calling to me. That is a great line. Awesome one-liner. But the folks who robbed the Ross and then crashed into each other, they are our winners again in What Is Wrong With You. Let's take a break. Michael Swain's next on 580 Sports Talk. for the 23rd Street Brewery Jayhawk Weekly here on 580 Sports Talk, brought to you by our good friends at 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Great place to watch a game. KU football is going to be on the road coming up on Saturday, so if you want to stop in with some friends, maybe your family, have a drink, have a great meal, 23rd Street Brewery on Clinton Parkway in Lawrence is the spot for that. Shout out to them because they catered the KU medium meal last night as well. The Bill Self buffalo chicken mac and cheese, delicious. And with that, we welcome in our good pal Michael Swain from Phog.net. Covers KU for Phog.net and 24/7 Sports. You can find him on Twitter at mswain247. Michael, we will start with the news from last night. It's fresh in our minds. We'll get to football here in just a moment. But your biggest positive and biggest negative takeaway from KU versus Omaha last night?
Yeah, I think on the positive side, I mean, there's honestly a lot you can kind of pick from. I think this is an interesting team right now. And for me, I think probably Grady Dick would be the biggest one. Obviously, you take into account the opposition, but to have the most points scored by a freshman in their debut since Xavier Henry back in 2009 is pretty big. And I think Grady Dick's made field goals of 9 are the most by a true freshman in their debut since 1982. So, I mean, you're looking at a historical debut from someone that I think everyone knew was going to be an elite scorer. But to come out, I think, and show that confidence and show that ability from game one is huge. And obviously bigger tests will come, but, you know, Grady Dick played on one of the best high school teams in the country, and Sunrise Christian was on one of the better AAU teams as well. So you're looking at someone that has played against top-level competition before. So when you play Duke, you know, next Tuesday, it's not going to be that much different. He's used to that. So I think for me, like, that's one of the big things, because I worry about scoring with this team, right? I think you know what Jalen Wilson is going to give you. I think you know Kevin McCullough is going to give you kind of 10 to 15 points every night. But if Grady Dick turns into a, 15 point per game guy or more, that's just massive, because I think for me going into the season, you projected him probably be around 12. But if he's more than that, that's huge, just because the floor spacing, the extra things that he can bring and forcing the defense to guard him all over the floor, I think is just massive. I think on the negative side, center, like, this is going to be a talking point all year. And I think we talked about it last week as well, where right now you've got two guys in the rotation, and KJ Adams and Ernest Uday Jr. Zach Clemens doesn't seem to be anywhere near the rotation, right? He played, basically 3 minutes in the first half, and that was it, and didn't come back in until garbage time. So I think for me, center's fascinating, because I don't see KJ Adams as a long-term guy that can play there, because you look at his size, he's 6'7", a negative wingspan. He rebounded the ball really well last night, but so many of those were offensive, right? I think 8 offensive rebounds, only 1 defensive rebound. And I worry about the defensive rebounding aspect of that with him. And then you've got someone like Ernest Uday, who has a high ceiling, but is a freshman that doesn't necessarily know everything like the back of his hand and doesn't necessarily get to play free. There are flashes, but in terms of consistency, it might not be there yet. So I think for me, that even if both of those guys have flashes against Omaha, I think there are still just some long-term concerns I have with the center position.
I liked what we saw from KJ Adams last night. I thought the energy was great. Obviously, the size gives its limitations. I thought he gave some really quality minutes there, even though he wasn't scoring. But you mentioned it, and we talked about this earlier in the show as well. He's just not really a 5, because he's only 6'7". He's not a tremendous defensive rebounder right now. He's not much of a scoring threat underneath. But at the 4, he can't shoot. And we've seen him shoot now once against Omaha, once against Penn State, and I cringed both times because I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it was not good. So what is the long-term future for KJ Adams? I think he's a nice player. I think his energy is great. He obviously provides a defensive spark, but if he can't score like a 4 and he really doesn't have the size to be a 5, what does the long-term prognosis look like for KJ Adams' fit?
Well, look, I think if you look at the class, the sophomore class as a whole, you can see where the pieces could fit together as a collective. And I think that that's something you have to look at sometimes, is how do these pieces come together? And if you're going to play KJ at the 4, that means Zach Clemens has to play the 5, because you need another floor spacer out there. You can't play Ernest and KJ and DeJuan and Jalen and Kevin McCullough. Like, that lineup is not going to work. I don't have the lineup data in front of me right now, but I remember last night looking at it and seeing the kind of the lineup with Wilson, Adams, and Uday was one of the worst lineups in terms of just scoring and getting outscored that KU used. So if KJ is going to play the 4, you need to have another floor spacer out there. Obviously, Grady Dick is one of those, but you need another guy. And I'm not going to count Jalen Wilson there just yet. Great. 3 of 7 in your first game of the season. Awesome. let's see him do it over the course of a month. And I think that Zach Clemens is kind of the key there. But you look at Zach Clemens and man, like it wasn't pretty when he was out there too. Like if you're trying to fight for a spot, like you just didn't see it from him, right? Defensively, it wasn't great. I thought he was fine on the glass, but I just look at that and I say, man, you need Zach Clemens, I think, to play at his best and to do the things that Bill Self and his coaching staff wants to then unlock someone like KJ Adams at the 4, because it's just not going to work if you put Ernest or Zuby at 5 with KJ at the 4, because the floor is, there's going to be zero space. Jalen Wilson and Dwan are not going to be able to get to the rim. Same with Kevin McCullough, and there's just so many issues that are going to happen with that.
Jayhawks will be back in action coming up on Thursday night, taking on North Dakota State on the hardwood. And we'll have plenty to talk about as we look ahead next week to the Champions Classic as well in Indianapolis when KU gets ready to take on Duke a week from tonight. I do want to flip over, Michael, though, to the football side of things because they are right in the thick of the season, and Kansas has bowl eligibility for the first time in 14 years. Michael, where were you in 2008? I've said a couple times, I was in 8th grade.
Oh, dude, I couldn't even tell you what grade I was in. I was in grade school. Shoot, that's a really good question. I know I was young enough that I was in grade school, and I remember watching the 2008 national title game because my dad had Kansas in his bracket, and that's kind of how this whole thing started for me. But man, I couldn't even tell you what grade I was in. But not watching KU football, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's been that long since KU was bowl eligible. They do it with a comfortable win over Oklahoma State. I mean, there have not been many games, Michael, in recent years, I mean, more than just recent years at this point, where KU has won a game against a conference foe comfortably, let alone a ranked one, even with the problems Oklahoma State's been facing. What stood out to you the most about that game? I assume it's something positive, and there were so many great performances. Devin Neal, your Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. I believe I saw today he was the Doak Walker National Running Back of the Week. I mean, just so many things to pick through from this game.
So many. And I think that for so much of this season, you've kind of scratched your head and said, wow, each time KU's played, there's been good and bad. And I think that this was probably the most complete game Kansas has played. I think the biggest issue you can look at is like, okay, the punter didn't have a great game. That's it. That's the only negative thing I think you can say. And so for me, I look at it and I just see a team that once again looks like it's about to play its best football in the month of November. And you look last year, right? Obviously there was the bad game to start November, but you get into the Texas game and then West Virginia and TCU to close out the season. And it seems like KU's heading in that direction where they're going to be playing some of their best football in this month of November. And if you look at what's at stake for Kansas, the fact that playing the Big 12 title game, yes, I just said that, is still on the table, just is so incredible. And I think that is what kind of carrot is now. You've got bowl eligibility, but hey, for KU, you kind of control your own destiny to some degree, right? If you win out, all you need Baylor to do is lose at Texas, at home to Kansas State, or against TCU. And I think that if you're going to put odds out there, they're going to lose one of those games. It's going to be really hard to win those 3 straight games. So I think for Kansas, there's so many positives you can take. The team offensively looks like it's got better in terms of just the physicality up front. Defensively, they look faster. The defensive front played so much better. And so overall, a really positive performance. And now I think for the team, you can't let that go to waste, right? You have to capitalize now. You're playing a Texas Tech team that is going to be on another quarterback this season. Man, it feels like every week Texas Tech has a new guy playing quarterback for them, and there's a new battle this week that they've got going on. So I just look at this team right now, and there's a huge opportunity in front of them, which is just crazy considering the mood after that Baylor game.
Michael Swain of Fog.net 24/7 Sports is our guest. This is Jayhawk Weekly, presented by 23rd Street Brewery of Lawrence. We do it every Tuesday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Now that win number 6 has been accomplished, that the bowl has been secured, and that this goal and this cloud has been kind of lifted over Kansas football, what are reasonable goals, not just results-wise, but what are reasonable goals as far as how this team looks and plays over the final 3 weeks of the regular season? And how do you think that could potentially change when and if Jalen Daniels is reintroduced into the lineup?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that expectation is to continue to build on it. I think that early in the season, KU did a really good job of building on the wins outside of falling behind 14-0 and 2 scores, if you want to go that far. And, 3 of the first 6 games, I think that they did a really good job of building off of wins. And I think that just Baylor and Oklahoma, things kind of snowballed, and obviously TCU just didn't make the final plays. And I think that for this team, it's going to be really important that they don't fall flat on the road at Texas Tech at night. I think that it being a night game probably lends itself to being a more juiced up team, right? It's not an 11 a.m. game in Lubbock, Texas, right? It's going to be night, good crowd, I would assume. And so I think for this team, it's going to be about building on it and making sure that Saturday wasn't a flash in the pan and kind of an anomaly in the second half of the season. So I look at that, and I mean, bringing back Jalen Daniels, you have to start Jason Bean this week. I think that's kind of my take and my position on it. You can't preach culture, competition, and fighting for your spot, and then award Jalen Daniels the starting job after Jason Bean just had the best game of his Kansas career. I think for me, you've got to give Jason Bean a half, and who even knows if Jalen Daniels will be available, right? You know, Lance Leipold and Andy Koldenek have kind of been coy about it this week, and we'll see on that. But I think that Jason Bean has to start because of what he did last week. And I don't think it's a great look in terms of the overall competition to tell everyone, hey, you got to compete for your spot. But when Jalen comes back, yeah, he's going to start, even though Jason Bean just helped you win your sixth game and played his best game. So I think overall, it's kind of where I stand on the quarterback stuff. But I think just goal for this team is just keep building. And I think they've shown they can do that through most of the season.
Michael, you bring up a point there, and I'm glad you did, because I wanted to follow up with that one way or the other, is that I totally understand that viewpoint. And I know you put a poll out on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, about, you know, which of these blind resume quarterbacks would you rather have? And one was Jason Bean and one was Jalen Daniels. What do you think the staff thinks about that situation? Because you're right. I mean, there's been such a culture about, you know, preaching to go out and win. And we went through not the same situation, but a similar situation last year with the red shirt with Jalen Daniels, right? Like, hey, do you want to preserve that year of eligibility, or do you want to say, hey, we're committed to trying to win as many games as we can right now, extra redshirt year be damned? Where do you think the coaching staff lies on, hey, Daniels might be the better quarterback, but we're winning right now when we just got this great game from Jason Bean? How do you think Leipold, Koldenek, and company feel about the quarterback situation if Daniels is able to go? Because you're right, maybe he can't this week.
Yeah, maybe he can't. And I think that from a coaching perspective, it's nice to have kind of that ace in the hole where when you have Jalen Daniels playing, you still have Jason Bean on the sideline, right? You saw that against TCU where Bean comes in and has an incredible game. Well, with Bean out there, and again, say Jalen Daniels is available, you have the ace in the hole, and you can go rock Jason Bean out there. And if he makes mistakes and looks like he did kind of in the middle of the second quarter against Oklahoma, or I think maybe a little bit in the first half against Baylor, even though I'd argue his teammates did not do him any favors, guess what? You can go roll Jalen Daniels out there and say, great, here's our quarterback that was so good through kind of the first 3 weeks of the season and kind of slowed down against Iowa State and TCU. So I don't know exactly where the coaches stand specifically on this, but I do have an inkling that even if Jalen Daniels was available, I think it's going to take Jason Bean deserving to lose his spot before the coaches do it.
Michael Swain, one final question for you before we let you go. Covers the Kansas Jayhawks for Phog.net and 24/7 Sports. Does KU get the 7th win of the year this week against Texas Tech?
You know, I actually think so. I think for me, when I looked at this game 3 weeks ago, I looked at the pace of play, and that was really concerning for me. You know, Oklahoma just carved KU going up tempo. Then all of a sudden you play a team like, you know, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State went fast with Rangel. They went fast, and KU was able to handle it. And I look at this Texas Tech team with either Donovan Smith or Tyler Shook at quarterback, and I think KU has a quarterback advantage regardless of who plays. So give me a quarterback advantage and a defense that looked re-energized and looks like it's figured out some of the tempo stuff. Like, I'll take KU. I've seen it's +5. I've not seen where it's at now. So, yeah, I'll take points and give me KU to win.
And for the best coverage of everything leading up to the game on Saturday, the KU basketball game on Thursday, and everything involving the Kansas Jayhawks, you can follow Michael on Twitter at mswain247. Head to phog.net. It's part of the 24/7 Sports Network. And Michael joins us every single Tuesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for Jayhawk Weekly, brought to you by 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Michael, we appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much. And we will see you Thursday night at Allen Fieldhouse.
Awesome. Sounds great. We'll talk to you guys later.
That is Michael Swain from Phog.net and 24/7 Sports. Awesome insight on all things KU. What a great week for the Kansas Jayhawks. Holy cow, it has been a very good week, very good couple of months, really, if you are a KU fan. We've got one more hour to go on 580 Sports Talk today. We will get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines, some midseason NFL awards, and picks for the college football playoff rankings next hour on 580 Sports Talk. now, final hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way on this Tuesday afternoon. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero taking you into your Tuesday evening on 580 Sports Talk today. Thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us. We truly do appreciate it. If you've missed any of the show up until this point, head to our website, 580wibw.com. If you haven't found out yet, we've got a brand new URL for the website. It's 580wibw.com. So much easier than WIBW News now. That's way less syllables, 4 fewer characters to type. It's what we brand ourselves as. It's what we say all the time. You're listening to 580 WIBW. Bang, easy. Why shouldn't that be our web address? So if you want to go check out all of the stories we've got on our front page, we've got game story last night from the KU game where I was. Also, speaking of KU, story about Devin Neal being the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week. All sorts of stuff. It is on our website right now, 580wibw.com. And right in the middle of the page, once you head over to the website, just hover your cursor over the podcasts tab. It's right in the middle of the page, right under the logo. Menu will pop up. Click on 580 Sports Talk. That is where you will find the hour-by-hour breakdown of the show today in podcast form. Michael Swain interview from last hour, recaps of KU basketball and K-State basketball from hour number 1 back in the first hour. It's all on our website, 580wibw.com. And, of course, you've got multiple ways you can interact with us now on 580 Sports Talk and Mic'd Up for that matter. On the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429 is the text line number. As it's always been, all your thoughts, tweets, or not takes, texts, whatever, send them to us on the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. And on YouTube, Sports on 580 WIBW. That is where we are live streaming the show every single day. Shout out to everybody who has subscribed over the last 2 weeks or so. It has been awesome to see that subscriber count go up. If you have not subscribed yet, we would love for you to. It's where you can watch all of our live streams, us and Mic'd Up, our recaps from KU and K-State games, Washburn games, high school interviews, Chiefs recap shows. All of it is on the YouTube at Sports on 580 WIBW on YouTube. And give us a follow on Twitter as well, too. Why not? Sports on 580 is the Twitter handle. Dan is at Dan Lucero Show. I'm at Brendan DZW. Give us a follow. The tweets are mostly good. I would say that. Mostly good. Occasionally some duds. Mostly good. I won't speak for you. I'll just speak for me.
I got nothing but heat. I tell you that right now.
Well, there you go. I didn't want to bring you down to my level. Coming up here in this 5 o'clock hour of the show, we'll get to our headlines here in just a second. We'll also get to some mid-season NFL awards. Mid-season MVP, Coach of the Year, Defensive and Offensive Players of the Year, Rookies of the Year. That's all coming up here in just a little bit. We'll also make our college football playoff rankings predictions for tonight. Anyway, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. As always, go check out blue.kansas.com for all the best offers, products, prices for heating, cooling, plumbing, everything that goes on in your house. Make sure it's in the best shape possible as we get into the colder months. It's gross out today. It's dark now. I'm looking out the window, the little slit that's open in our closed blinds. It's dark outside. It's cold out. It's going to be a little bit warmer tomorrow, and then it's going to get cold after that. So make sure the heating in your house is all worked out. When it gets warm out, you want the AC working as well. Well, the Peak Performance Safety Check from Blue Dot will get all of those things. Your heating, your cooling, your plumbing, all checked once a year, all for just one low price. Check out the Peak Performance Safety Check and more at the website, blue.kansas.com. I would like to start our headlines today with just some of the biggest news and notes from the opening night of college basketball. Obviously, KU won, the defending champions. K-State won, start of the Tang Gang era in Manhattan. Great to see. Here are some of the big headlines from yesterday, and it's less about who won. Okay, Duke won in the first game of the John Shire era. Whoop-de-doo, who cares? Here's some of the games that really did stand out, though. In the Big 12, Sam Houston State beat Oklahoma in Norman. Nobody was there. It was empty at the Noble Center, okay? And they lost. They lost 52-51. I really like Porter Moser. I do. I think he's a great coach. I think he's going to have Oklahoma cooking in the near future. Not to start this season. Holy cow, you cannot lose that game to Sam Houston State. That's not exactly the best program in America. I know that they have moved up or are in the process of moving up. They'll be Conference USA soon if they're not already. But good Lord, that is an awful, awful loss. I think it's next year they're joining Conference USA.
I think you're right.
That is a terrible loss for Oklahoma. TCU nearly had the worst loss of the day. They won by a single point thanks to a final 10 seconds three-pointer by Mike Miles. How do you leave Mike Miles open with under 10 seconds?
There's a transition look. He walked right into it. I watched the end of that game. I put it on with about 2 minutes to go. It was on ESPN Plus, and I watched the end of that game. And yeah, Miles was the trailer in transition, walked right into an open three from up top and hit it. And that's what a great player should do. Like if he's going to be that guy for TCU, then he should be that guy to hit the big shot and rescue his team from what would have been an utterly horrendous loss.
You can't even be in a game with Arkansas Pine Bluff.
How do they score 70 plus points on you if you purport to be a serious basketball school in the Big 12?
Unforgivable. I mean, that's a bad win.
Yeah,
there aren't many of them. That's a bad win.
It is a bad win.
We had a couple of those yesterday where I joked about it a lot on the air, the game between James Madison and Valley Forge yesterday. That's a bad win. They need a quad 5 for games like that. Like that should not count in any of the quads. Add another quad, 5, 6, 7, 8. I don't care. That's awful.
Like
beating Pine Bluff by a point is terrible.
Yeah, there were some other ones. The University of St. Thomas has been Division 1 for like 2 years, and they were giving Creighton absolute hell.
They were up 58-57. Creighton had to end 57-56. Creighton had to end the game on a 16-3 run to win over the Tommies of St. Thomas.
That's the number 9 team in the country.
Yeah, not great there.
Getting everything they can handle from a school, again, that was Division 3 2 years ago. They got kicked out of their Division 3 conference because they were too committed to sports and too good at football.
Which is pretty funny.
Now they're nationally ranked in the FCS.
Are they really?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. Wow. Good for them. Good to see a program that's actually committed to it. You nerds. You D3 nerds.
Hey, rude.
Not your conference, only the other conference.
Okay, fair. That's fine.
I don't know. DePauw's been in multiple conferences. Is it a known like academic conference?
No. Okay. I would not say that about the North Coast Athletic Conference, although Oberlin is in it.
Okay. Good school. It's not quite the nerdy 9. You know, U of C, Wash U, all those schools.
No, the old University Athletic Association. No. Not the NESCAC. No.
We also had upsets, including Florida State losing to Stetson, the Hatters, 83-74. Stetson won like 10 games last year.
Florida State's down like 3 starters, to be fair to Leonard Hamilton's bunch. And I like Leonard Hamilton a lot.
I do too.
I got a lot of time for him and the way his program plays.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how many starters you're down. You can't lose to Stetson, man.
You can't lose to Stetson.
That's a hat. You lost to a hat.
Also, Andy Enfield, who rose to prominence as the head coach of the Dunk City Florida Gulf Coast team,
yes,
then left and took a job at USC. Understandable. They've had a little success. They got to the Sweet 16 a couple years ago when they beat KU in the second round of the COVID tournament. Florida Gulf Coast crossed the country, went to USC, and beat their former head coach 74-61. That's not a game you can lose if you're USC.
I wonder if it feels like it should have been more than this for Enfield. I know they pasted Kansas entirely off the map in the tournament 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But it sure feels like it should be a lot better for the Trojans.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. They've always just seemed to be like, okay. Like, yeah, USC's fine. Like, they should be better, right? Like, you should be able to get more out of recruiting in Southern California, right? Like, I know it's a big football recruiting territory. There's plenty of basketball talent in LA, San Diego, Pasadena as well. You should be more than just like, oh yeah, they're an okay Pac-12 program.
Yeah,
you'd think they'd be more.
They got ballers in Los Angeles.
Yeah,
plenty of them. It can't all go to UCLA.
No, right? There's only 13 roster spots. By the way, one game that has significance to Kansas State, we'll wrap up with this one. UC Davis, the Aggies, beat Cal 75-65 at Cal. Guess who K-State's next opponent is?
It is the Cal Bears.
It is the Cal Bears.
Is that the worst Power 5 program in the country at the moment?
Man, it really is almost depressing how bad their athletic department is. Like, there's so much history and tradition at Cal, and they just suck at everything.
They don't want to be good.
No, they really should drop the D3. Man,
it's
I don't
them
know.
or it's. I mean, Boston College has been in a rut for a while. Pitt is in a really bad spot.
Yeah, Pitt is in a bad spot. It might be Cal, man. There's just no commitment. There's just no want. We talk about how SEC schools in football, they just care about football more than anyone else. They've got the want to. Cal doesn't have any in anything. And it's pretty depressing. But yeah, it's probably Cal. You're losing to UC Davis. Come on. By the way, one final college basketball note for you. We asked this the other day. Bruce Weber is indeed going to call Illinois basketball games. In fact, he's going to make his debut with an Illinois game this week.
Yes.
They're taking on the Roos.
All right.
Of Kansas City, not UMKC. It's just Kansas City. Yeah, that's where Bruce Weber's going to start. That's interesting.
Speaking of Kansas City, they lost to Lincoln last night. Lincoln, Missouri. The Lincoln Blue Tigers of the MIAA. Picked to finish 13th in the league by the coaches and 14th by the media. For the record, for those who don't know, there are 14 teams in the MIAA. They beat Kansas City last night.
It was Newman picked lower, right?
I believe the coaches have Newman 14th. Yes.
Ugh, not great. We also have a texter from the 785 who says Stetson was an awful, stinking 80s cologne.
That's what you lost to, Leonard Hamilton. You lost to gross cologne.
They once upon a time, the main logo for Stetson was a big S. Well, it still is an S with a hat on.
Yeah, with the hat.
But it used to just be the Michigan State S.
Yeah.
With the hat on. And my buddy called them Michigan State with a cowboy hat. That's just what we called them for a really long time. Now they've got a better looking S and a better looking hat. But yeah, they stink. They're bad. And you still lost them. I saw last year, I think they only won 10 games. That's really funny. It is not really like all that important, but yeah, Stetson Hatters basketball. Won by 9, man. You can't lose that game. The one thing about like KU, and I know that's annoying to many folks, like, oh, of course you go back to Kansas, but like even the bad losses, like San Diego State at home, like San Diego State's a program that's got a pretty solid tradition in recent memory.
Yeah,
that's a good program. Like, you can't lose to Stetson, man.
No.
North Carolina was getting the work for a little bit from UNC Wilmington last night. They struggled. They won by 13 in the end.
My hot take is that North Carolina is very overrated coming into this season.
That is a hot take. Also, Stetson won 11 games last year. Excuse me.
They are like this year's USC. Where like, do I expect the North Carolina Tar Heels to be good this year? Sure, I do. I don't think they're going to stink. I don't think they're going to fall to the bottom half of the conference. But it was like how everybody was hyped on UCLA going into last season because they made the national title or they made the Final Four, and everybody forgot that they were an 11 seed that had to win one of the first 4 games just to get into the actual tournament. And I think everybody has forgotten that North Carolina was an 8 seed last year, lost to Pitt by 20, and they graduated Brady Manick.
Fair,
pretty important.
Yeah, so, very important.
Like North Carolina, will they be good? Sure. Would it shock me if they made a run to the Final Four? Probably not, because they did it last year. Do I think they're the number 1 team in the country? No. I don't.
CJ Moore's piece about watching college the national championship game with Bill Self. It was like Self's last thing before he turned the page. It's awesome. If you're an athletic subscriber, 1, why not? 2, it is absolutely tremendous.
Worth a read.
Self talking about getting matchups on Brady Manick, very funny. Like, oh yeah, we knew we had the matchup here.
First headline for me, it continues to be a remarkable and head-scratching story in the National Football League that the Indianapolis Colts fired head coach Frank Reich yesterday and replaced him with former Colt Jeff Saturday, whose only coaching experience has come at the high school level and was more currently an analyst on ESPN, in addition to his job as the head coach of Hebron Christian Academy in Georgia, where he was 20-16 in 3 years as the head coach. Anyway, the Colts made Jeff Saturday their interim head coach yesterday. They held a back crap insane press conference last night because that's Jim Irsay's only speed. in which Jim Irsay defended the decision to bring Saturday aboard by saying, essentially, I'm glad he has no experience because he won't be a slave to analytics like a big nerd. He'll be a real football man who makes real football decisions. One of those decisions that Saturday had to make today was who's going to call plays when the Colts play on Sunday, because literally nobody on staff had ever called plays in an NFL game. They've landed on passing game specialist and assistant quarterbacks coach, and obviously fake name, Parks Frazier. He's going to be the play caller. Frazier is 30 years old. Frank Reich hired him, officiated Frazier's wedding.
To the former Colts team reporter.
Also, Frazier has an undergrad degree in computer science and is considered among the leaders on staff in the use of technology and data, which I thought was Jim Irsay's whole reason for bringing Jeff Saturday in, that he didn't want to listen to the nerds. You get scared to make decisions if you've been around football. I want a guy who's going to call fullback dive 45 times.
Jim Irsay has never even heard of Microsoft Excel.
Jim Irsay has done a lot of drugs.
Yes.
Like, I don't say that. I don't say that too glibly. Like, the man is a recovering addict. Yeah, like this is public information. I'm not saying anything. I'm not talking out of school here. But, like, I don't know what was going on in the man's brain when he decided this is the path for us to go. They asked Peyton Manning about this last night on the Manning cast on Monday Night Football. And they asked Peyton Manning, hey, it's your former teammate. How do you think he's going to do? And you could tell Peyton Manning was like, I don't know how he's going to do. His answer was very much, well, he's a great teammate and a nice guy, and he's my friend, and I wish him the best.
The funniest clip that came out of all this is the famous one of Peyton Manning yelling at Jeff Saturday to quit calling the bleeping plays, which I'm sure everyone has seen at some point. It's very, very funny. To get into the other side of this, Jeff Saturday works. I'm sure he still like works at ESPN, right? Like he's probably just on hold, his employment there while he coaches the Colts. No one at that network is going to say anything bad about him because Jeff Saturday, by all accounts, is a very affable guy. People really like him. I think he's relatively entertaining on TV. Kyle Brandt of NFL Network this morning on Good Morning Football. We won't play the whole clip for you, but he went off about this. Part of his statement reads as such, or segment reads as such, quote, this story is embarrassing. I've gotten to meet Jeff Saturday a few times, and he was great, and I really respect him as a football player and a media member. Isn't he embarrassed to take this job? At best, uncomfortable. Isn't this awkward for him? Did he consider just saying no, just out of respect? Because I think it's a huge backhand to every man and woman in the world in any coaching profession, in any coaching position in college, in the pros, in high school. The coaching profession is something that drains you psychologically, and he got it because he's friends with a billionaire. Man, that's intense. He also goes on to say, what do you say here? Because he's a high school coach and he was on ESPN and he was screaming on Get Up. It's an interesting media thing, too, because this is an ESPN employee, and I'd be fascinated to hear if anybody on ESPN has something critical to say about Jeff Saturday in this case, or is it just, oh, we're happy for Jeff. If I'm the Colts, I'm embarrassed yesterday. By the way, on Monday night, because I usually have ESPN on Monday nights because I like Scott Van Pelt, and they just kind of rewind their NFL programming after that overnight, and I'll have it on while I'm working or, doing whatever.
Sure.
They replay their afternoon highlight show, NFL Rewind, after SportsCenter with SVP on Monday nights. The show started with Wendy Nix, their host, saying, conspicuously absent is Jeff Saturday because he is now coaching the Colts. We're so happy for Jeff. Literally this. So, yes, Kyle Brandt was spot on.
Yeah, like on the one hand, I know there are a lot of people up in arms, and one of the first things people pointed to, and fairly, I think, pointed to, is the NFL's track record hiring minority head coaches is abysmal. Like, we know this. That's not new. There is a former Colt who is currently on the staff of the Colts who happens to be black. That's Reggie Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that his role as the receivers coach would make him more qualified to be the interim head coach than Jeff Saturday. At the same time, there were some commentators who were quick to point out there are a lot of minority head coaches who get interim roles and then they never turn into anything and then they never get another chance, because really what you're doing, if you're the interim head coach, you're guiding a crummy team through a lost season. And then people will look at that and say, well, he didn't accomplish anything. And then he doesn't get another chance. And so it's sort of a backhanded compliment sometimes to be the interim guy. And Reggie Wayne himself has said publicly he didn't really have the desire to be a head coach. Like, he likes coaching, but he's not sure he wants to be a head coach.
And that's totally fair.
Yes. So what Jeff Saturday is doing, ultimately, the Colts need a quarterback. They need to lose games. It is in their interest to lose football games. It is in their interest to be one of the worst teams in the NFL so they can have a high draft pick, so they can take Hendon Hooker or CJ Stroud or Will Levis or whoever it is that they decide is going to be their next quarterback, because they keep cycling through retreads and it's not working. And that's why they're where they are.
I will point out one thing that Irsay said last night that I think, not that he deserves like benefit of the doubt, but one thing I think that was taken out of context. He said, he committed his, to hiring Saturday and said he will be our coach for 8 games and hopefully more. And it seemed like the internet kind of took that as he wants to hire Jeff Saturday full time. I thought he just meant, I want Jeff Saturday to get us to the playoffs this year. Maybe I'm giving him too much of a break.
Yeah.
But that's how I read it. I saw a lot of people, he's already given him the job. I mean, if he does, that's another discussion. We can have that discussion in March or, whenever probably before March, honestly, when that actually happens. But yeah, I mean, the quotes that came out of it were absurd. The one about he's not going to get bogged down to the analytics was nuts. Hiring a 30-year-old was essentially Frank Reich's like water boy in like coffee getter is insane. I'm not a Colts fan. My team's got its own problems. I'm glad I'm not a Colts fan, because that is a you-know-what show.
The quote from the press conference yesterday that I think will stick with Irsay for the longest time. Want to bet against this guy? Put your money down. I'd love to see it because I know what he's about. I can't wait to make money on the Jeff Saturday Parks Frazier Colts. I can't wait. Unders.
We have a text or a comment in on the YouTube comment section. Shout out to our pal Barbara, who chimes in and says, OMG, I feel so bad for those players on the Colts. Yeah, like imagine being Michael Pittman. Like, I've had to have broke-ass Matt Ryan throwing to me. Now I've got Sam Ellinger trying to throw the ball to me. I'm supposed to be this big player. I got to think about my contract in the future. He's a real good player. I got old Jeff Saturday, who's never done this before, who's going to tell me what to do?
Yeah.
You kidding?
Yeah, like
Parks Frazier? It's Park Frazier plural. Parks Frazier is going to tell me what to do.
We have talked about this, how tanking doesn't really go over in NFL locker rooms the way it does in other places, because careers are shorter and the game is more violent.
And contracts aren't guaranteed. So tanking does not go over well, particularly in a locker room with a bunch of really highly paid guys who had designs this year on maybe winning something. Like, you don't bring in Matt Ryan if you don't think you're going to win. Like, obviously it isn't working and the season has gone south, but the objective this year for the Colts was to win. And now the guy from Get Up is my head coach. The guy who was sitting next to Ryan Clark last week and tweeting about how bad the Raiders looked. Quote, Raiders look horrible, from Jeff Saturday's own personal Twitter account. Now I got to go try and beat the Raiders with this guy? Yeah. By the way, the Raiders are awful, right? Like, we all agree the Raiders are truly awful.
Oh, yeah.
They are favored by 6.5 points over the Colts.
Listen to me and listen to me well. If Jeff Saturday in his head coaching debut beats Josh McDaniels and the Raiders, the Raiders have to fire him on the spot.
It will be the funniest result of the season. Not close. Not even close. Truly amazing. By the way, one more real quick headline we'll get to here. Speaking of the Raiders, they waived another former first-round pick today.
Yeah, they did.
Jonathan Abram, 2019 first-round pick safety. They tried to trade him at the deadline, reportedly. Couldn't find anyone, so they waived him. He'll go latch on somewhere. Jonathan Abram stinks. He's not good. He was kind of a personality on Hard Knocks. I remember people were like, oh, yeah, I like Jonathan Abram. He was kind of funny on Hard Knocks. He's just not a smart football player. Like, he hurts himself all the time, which is really not what you want from a defensive player. That it's like running into a brick wall over and over. Not smart. He's not very good. And yet another miss by the Mayock-Gruden pairing.
Mike Mayock was the general manager for 3 years. He drafted 23 players. Only 11 of those are still with the Raiders. Only 2 of his first-round picks are still with the Raiders. Cleveland Farrell and Josh Jacobs.
Both of whom are going to be free agents after this year because their fifth-year options were declined.
There is a short list of worst general managers of all time. Mike Mayock is on that list.
Yes.
And he might be close to the head of the class.
And if you want to be in the, well, John Gruden had a say in it too, that's fine. He's also awful.
Hey,
that does not excuse the other one.
That's future South Florida head football coach John Gruden to you.
Yeah, rumored. Would you offer the job to John Gruden? Why would John Gruden take that job?
Because it's football, man.
That would be hilarious. I'll give you that much. It would be very funny.
I'd want a camera to follow him everywhere he went.
That'll do it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Go check them out online at blue.kansas.com. We've got more NFL coming up on the other side of this break. We'll hand out some midseason awards. Funniest storyline is now the result of Raiders-Colts, by the way. That wins for potentially funniest game of the year. But we'll name our midseason MVP and more coming up next on 580 Sports Talk. .534 on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan and Dan here with you. Live on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW, and live on YouTube as well at Sports on 580 WIBW is where you can find us. You can even just go to youtube.com/@Sports on 580, and you can find us that way. Extremely easy if you have not subscribed to us yet, but we definitely recommend you go subscribe to us. We are about halfway through the NFL season. That means it is time to get to some NFL mid-season awards. We'll go with a few here. We'll go with most of the basic ones. We've got the MVP. We'll go offensive and defensive players of the year. I don't have offensive player of the year listed here, but that's fine. We'll go with it anyway. Offensive and defensive rookies of the year. If we think of anything else good, we'll come up with them. And coach of the year. We'll do coach of the year as well. So let's start with MVP. Dan, I will leave the floor to you. We'll go fairly rapid fire through these because you got a bunch of them. Who is your mid-season National Football League most valuable player?
I think after his performance on Sunday night, I think it's Patrick Mahomes.
I agree with you.
What he has done this season against the narrative of, oh, what's that passing game? What's that offense going to look like without Tyreek Hill? has been nothing short of remarkable. He is on pace for an NFL record in passing yards. I know records are different now with the 17-game season, but still, he is on pace to break that record. He is playing some brilliant football. He has the Chiefs tied at the top of the AFC. Mahomes is my MVP.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. He has been, again, we talked about it last week. The narrative should in no uncertain terms favor Patrick Mahomes. Josh Allen's been awesome. He has been truly, truly awesome. I hope he is not injured long term. He's got all the weapons in the world that he could want. He's got pretty consistent coaching. Yes, he lost his offensive coordinator, but his quarterback's coach stepped in and is now his offensive coordinator. And Ken Dorsey, I think, has done a great job. Sean McDermott's an awesome head coach. He's got Stephon Diggs. He's got a developing Gabriel Davis. The narrative has been they're going to be great. For the Chiefs, it was either how are they going to survive without Tyreek Hill, or just straight up, they won't survive without Tyreek Hill, which, again, I will repeat for the umpteenth time, was stupid from the beginning, but that was the narrative, and Patrick Mahomes has just destroyed it this season. The Chiefs' offense as a whole has destroyed it. He would be my midseason MVP as well. I don't know what the odds on that are right now.
Plus 185 at FanDuel for Mahomes. That makes him the odds-on favorite.
Is he really the odds-on favorite now?
Goes him, and then Hurts, and then Allen.
Interesting. Very interesting. Speaking of offensive players, like they all are, who's your offensive player of the year? Let's make this a non-quarterback award. Let's go best offensive non-quarterback for offensive player of the year so far.
I think it's Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs. You've seen the numbers he's put up in 9 games.
They're absurd.
76 catches for 1,104 yards. Now, he's only got 3 touchdowns, which is interesting. You figure he would have had a lot more than that, given that he has had 100 targets this year. Only 3 of them being for touchdowns is pretty wild. Mike Gesicki has more receiving touchdowns than Tyreek Hill. But come on, he's got 1,100 yards in 9 games. That's unreal stuff. He has proven to be every bit as dynamic as he was in Kansas City, even with a quarterback with a little less arm strength throwing him the ball. Tyreek Hill has proven that he might just be the best receiver in the NFL, and he'd be my choice here at the midway.
That's a very good choice. Nobody else in the NFL has more than number 2 in the NFL receiving yards wise is Justin Jefferson with 867, which is great. It is really great. Tyreek Hill has beat by over 200 yards. That is crazy. For the sake of going with a different pick, I'm going to give you Derrick Henry, and once again, I'm going to steer into the narrative thing here. Derrick Henry was coming off a broken foot from last year. He played in the playoff game. He was not the same. I did not think he was going to be this good. He leads the NFL in rushing again. And on a team that you know is not going to pass very much, and frankly just can't pass very much since they got rid of their best wide receiver, I would go with Derrick Henry. Tyreek Hill probably should be the number 1 in that category. Again, I want to be different. I'm going to give a nod to A.J. Brown as well. He was already so good in Tennessee. I think he's taken it up even to another level right now. So I'd give A.J. Brown a look too in that regard. Defensive player of the year. I'll go first here because I'm going to give you a player that's a little bit off the board. There's a handful that I think would be really good selections for this award. I'm going to go with the NFL's sack leader. Do you know who that is?
I do not know who that is.
He is the only player who has double-digit sacks so far this year. I'm going to go with Matthew Judon of the New England Patriots. He's a really good player. He was really good last year. He's been excellent this season. He leads the 2 top sackers in the NFL this year. Or, I'm sorry, there's a 3-way tie for second. Number 1 is Matthew Judon. The 3-way tie for second, Nick Bosa, makes sense. Za'Darius Smith, who thought might be done after he missed all last year with a back injury, and Justin Houston.
Justin Houston was awesome last night.
Awesome for Baltimore. I'm going to go with Judon, though. 11.5 sacks already for a Patriots team that's just kind of mid.
I'm going with Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys. That's probably the consensus pick. I'm not sure if that's the odds-on pick, but Micah Parsons is my choice. 8 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 14 quarterback hits, 9 tackles for a loss. He's just a menace, and he makes everyone else on that Dallas defense that much more potent because you have to account for Parsons on every snap. And it is the Dallas defense that is the biggest reason why that team is 6-2 and an NFC contender. And Parsons leads the way. He's my choice.
We also have a question from the Big O Tires text line. What is Tyreek Hill's yak for the season? His yards after catch? I'm looking for that now, and I believe he is at 339 yards. Last season with the Chiefs, he had 444 in 17 games. He's at 339 already this year.
Ridiculous.
That is truly, ridiculous is the actual perfect word for it. Let's get to some rookies. Who's your offensive rookie of the year?
Real quickly, before we get there, defensive player of the year, it is Micah Parsons, minus 250 at FanDuel right now to win the AP defensive player of the year.
So that's a bad bet, because if you're doing a future, you should at least get some good value.
Right. Yeah. If you're looking to make a bet, Matthew Judon is plus 1,400. Nick Bosa plus 1,000, plus 1,000. Miles Garrett plus 1,200. Sorry,
I kind of like the Garrett one.
Gambling brain. What's the next one?
Next one. Let's go offensive rookie of the year.
Offensive rookie of the year. I'm going to be a homer and give it to Kenneth Walker, the third of the Seattle Seahawks. K9, as he's known, because Kenneth K, and he wears number 9.
And he's got that dog in him.
He sure does. 570 yards, 7 touchdowns on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry. He has been an absolute beast on the ground, making sure the Seahawks haven't missed a beat after the season-ending injury to Rashad Penny, looking very much like he was deserving of a second-round selection. This was going to be Breece Hall's award to lose, and then he got hurt. And so now it's Kenneth Walker III's award to lose.
I'm going to go with a different running back. It should be Kenneth Walker. I will put that out there. I'm going to give my vote to a different rookie running back, though. I'm going to give you Dameon Pierce for Houston, and here is why. What other parts of the Houston Texans are watchable right now?
I couldn't even name 5 other players on that team.
Dameon Pierce is awesome, and he is the only reason to watch that team. Can we name 5 total? Pierce?
I got
Mills
Brandon
Mafia.
Cooks, Nico Collins,
Okay.
Davis Mills. Whitney Merciless still play for them?
No, he played for the Packers the second half of last year, then retired. He tore his bicep. Sucked. He's such a good player.
Yeah, I got nothing for you.
Pierce,
Marlon
Mills,
Mack,
Cooks, Collins, and Derek Stingley.
Oh, sure, yeah, the rookie. Yeah.
Speaking of defensive rookies, who's your defensive rookie of the year?
Just a note, Dameon Pierce plus 220, offensive rookie of the year. Kenneth Walker is the odds-on favorite at FanDuel, minus 135.
That sounds about right.
Defensive rookie of the year, I'm going to be a homer again. Tariq Woolen, Seattle Seahawks.
Okay.
5th round pick out of UTSA. He's got those guys in a seatbelt this year. Had interceptions in 4 consecutive games, 4 picks on the year, has taken 1 back for a touchdown, has also recovered a pair of fumbles. He has been the leader in Seattle's newly ascendant secondary and is starting to get a reputation as a guy you don't throw at. Very similar to another tall, rangy 5th round pick at cornerback for the Seahawks a decade ago, more than a decade ago now, who's headed for Canton. The new Richard Sherman, Tariq Woolen. He's my pick.
I'm glad Woolen's awesome. I loved him coming out of UTSA. Great pick. I'm glad you picked him, though, so I can go with the guy who I think is going to win the award for sure. Can you name 5 cornerbacks in the NFL right now who are better than Sauce Gardner?
Tariq Woolen.
Okay, outside of Tariq Woolen.
No, Sauce has played awesome, and that whole defense has sort of fed off of what he has done and is a big part of the reason the Jets are where they are right now.
He's got the sauce. He is awesome. Do we have odds on defensive rookie of the year?
Yes. Sauce Gardner minus 120, Tariq Woolen plus 210. Nobody else even really close. Aiden Hutchinson plus 1,400, Jack Jones plus 1,600, the corner for the Patriots.
Yeah, I kind of like those Woolen odds. I think that's right where they have the 2 of those. I kind of like those odds for Woolen, though. Gardner's been incredible, though. And if you want to play any of those futures, you can do so at FanDuel.
Yeah, you sure can. Now is a great time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's free bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just sign up using my promo code Lucero. Use the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use to play futures bets, money lines, point spreads, player props, same game parlays, all your favorite bets, all your favorite sports. Basketball's here. College basketball's here. If you're a KU, K-State fan, you can now bet on your favorite college basketball games. So sign up today with promo code Lucero for your no-sweat first bet. That's promo code LUCERO. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in Kansas. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets. It expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino LLC. Gambling problem? Getting help is your best bet. Call 1-800-522-4700 or visit ksgamblinghelp.com.
We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll make our picks for tonight's college football playoff rankings after this on 580 Sports Talk. Finishing things up on 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. Brendan and Dan here with you. College football playoff rankings coming out tonight. Dan, who is your top four?
Georgia's number one.
Yeah.
Pretty obviously and emphatically with what they did to Tennessee on Saturday. 2 and 3, I suspect, are going to be Ohio State and Michigan, probably in that order. I would put Michigan ahead of Ohio State. Little bit of my own personal bias there, but also I just think I know Michigan has also played with their food. Like you look at their halftime scores from games, and they've been in a lot of tight games at halftime that turn into like not tight games. Like they were trailing Rutgers at halftime and then dropped an anvil on their head in the second half, 152-17. Shut out Rutgers in the second half. They had a pick six. They scored like 3 touchdowns in a minute 20, something ridiculous like that. Ohio State, though, I know that they have also blown teams out, but it has taken them a lot longer to get to that point than it has taken Michigan. And I feel like Michigan's been a little bit more impressive with the eye test than Ohio State has been to this point this year, even though Ohio State's win over Notre Dame is starting to look a little better.
Yeah.
So that's 2 and 3 for me. And then 4, this is where I would put TCU. This is where the committee is going to put Tennessee.
Yeah, that's sort of how it feels, right? I mean, oh, well, they were number one before, even though that's not really how it's supposed to work.
Realistically, what that says, what the committee says is we would rather put a one-loss SEC team in than a undefeated Big 12 team.
which I think by the end of the year would change. I do think if you were in that situation, they would give the nod to the undefeated Big 12 team. That's just what makes this entire exercise so lame, is that, like, if your whole bit is, well, it changes every single week. Okay, well, then why are you even bothering right now? Oh, we all know exactly why you're even bothering to. By the way, real quick, did you know that one person voted for Ohio State as the number one team in the country this week?
Did not know that.
There was one poll of 63 that had Ohio State number one.
They gave a ballot to Buckeye guy.
Actually, an Iowa writer. Is there anyone who officially covers Ohio State who votes? Two, in fact. Both had Ohio State second. Someone even had Ohio State third. Wow. Multiple people had Ohio State third behind Michigan. So there you go. Some people are in the same boat as you. I think it will be Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, I think is how they're going to do it.
Here's a question that will be fascinating. Does Clemson stay above TCU? That, I think, is the most interesting thing to watch for tonight. Does Clemson stay ahead of TCU? Because if Clemson stays ahead of TCU, then there is no chance a one-loss Big 12 team makes this thing. No chance.
Yeah, you're correct about that. No, I mean, you should put Clemson in a dumpster. They're not going to, but they should. Creflo Dollar ass coach. Garbage team. I hate Clemson so much. I
am no fan of Dabo Swinney. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about him. I think he's a hypocrite.
My hate for Clemson is actually pretty close to Missouri. Like, you know how much I hate Missouri. I hate Clemson pretty much darn near as much. I hate Clemson so much. They should drop precipitously. I think right now, if you were going to give me the picks of 5th and 6th too, I would put Oregon 5th. If I was putting the poll together, I would go Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, TCU, Oregon, Tennessee.
I don't think I'd put Oregon ahead of Tennessee, because Tennessee, granted, the deficit was a little due with the rain, but they had to go on the road where it was a neutral site, kind of, for Oregon, Georgia. Tennessee did acquit themselves better against Georgia than Oregon did. So I would still put Tennessee above Oregon. Boy, Oregon ahead of TCU could be interesting too. Yeah, TCU could still be out of the top 6 tonight, theoretically.
They could. I don't think they will be, but they definitely could be. We're going to take one more time out here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll come back, wrap up this edition of the show with the final word after this break. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday with the final word, Dan.
The players are bought in. The students in Manhattan are bought in. Now it's time for the rest of Kansas State's fans to be like my Twitter timeline and buy in on K-State hoops under Jerome Tang. I'm not sure how good they are going to be, how many games they're going to win, whether they'll reach the postseason, any of that. They are going to be fun to watch, an entertaining basketball team to watch. That is what K-State fans have deserved after the last couple of years. We're a death slog under Bruce Weber. This is going to be a team that gets after it for 40 minutes and 94 feet every single possession, and I think that should be rewarded, and I think we're going to see a lot more fans in the seats at Bramlage Coliseum this season, no question.
Quick two-parter for me. Number one, KU basketball back. It felt good to be back at Allen Fieldhouse last night. Team's going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be national championship good, but they're going to be very good this year, and they're going to have to rely on a lot from the star-studded freshman Grady Dick, but it looks, at least from initial returns, like he is going to be a pretty darn special player. Unbelievable release for an 18-year-old behind the arc. Part number two of my final word, hey, go vote. We've still got an hour and 3 minutes until the polls close here in Kansas. Civic duty, all of that. I know you've been hounded with it all day, but it's true. It is your civic duty. So if you're registered, go vote, and if not, make sure you register to vote and then go take care of voting as soon as you possibly can. That'll do it for 580 Sports Talk on this Tuesday afternoon. We will be back tomorrow from 3 until 6. Tim Fitzgerald will join us to talk all things K-State. We'll get to more on the NFL landscape as we are halfway through the season. That's all coming up tomorrow. So until then, for Dan Lucero, I am Brendan Dworzinski. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll talk to you tomorrow at 3 on 580 Sports Talk.